Are we live? Looks like we're live. It says no data. Is this true or false? You guys out there? Is it lying to me again? Okay, so the other day I was perusing around the internet and somehow ended up reading some of Eliphas Levi's Transcendental Magic. I believe I skimmed through it as a teenager, but I don't think I understood a lot of what I was reading. And in light of a lot of things, one of my, I guess not one of, my primary focus in my life since I was a child was really this idea or this belief that there was a metaphysical truth, that we could know, that we're supposed to know where the universe came from, what God is, and all of the stuff along those lines. And I also had a deep-seated hatred of organized religion, right? And so over the course of decades, I've made a tremendous amount of progress, I feel, in uncovering that secret doctrine. And in recent years, discoveries in physics and morphology and neuroscience are starting to align with, in particular, hermetic ideas, but ancient knowledge in general. And this book represents, I think, the best piece of ancient evidence that I've come across so far that these magicians, anticipated these developments in science. And one of the interesting things about Levi is that he would actually contextualize things that way. For example, we know now that human will does exert influence on subatomic particles. The idea that the observer actually causes the collapse of the wave function is gaining ground with mainstream physicists. I mean, you guys probably, most of you follow me, you've heard it all. I'm not going to go through it right now. But just, tremendous evidence in favor of this. And Levi actually says at one point that the mechanism of action of magic is the electromagnetic field, basically, in whatever terms were available to him in the 1800s, as you'll see. He also points out that the Kabbalah will be found to have anticipated discoveries in physics. And that hadn't happened yet, but it has happened, at least theoretically. It's not a standard model, but Penrose's CCC model is exactly congruent with the Kabbalistic creation model. So, I just realized I have no tissue and I need to blow my nose. So let me take care of that and I'll be right back and we'll dive in. And this book covers everything from alchemy and the philosopher's stone, the relationship between gold and light and consciousness, something that I've been deeply interested in for quite some time. This really is just a tremendous work, and I'm really excited to be able to dive in to it with you. Let me check in with the chat and see, make sure we have audio and whatnot. Please do consider sharing these streams too, because I really want people to see this. It's going to be phenomenally interesting. Also, I want to mention before we get started that I'm still working on fundraising efforts. I actually am going back for another procedure tomorrow, but surgeries and whatnot. On top of that, we're really trying to blow this channel up, and I'm basically leaving it up to the community. If people support us enough that we can buy our way over the hump, so be it. And if not, then so be it. So this is a demonetized channel, and it's up to the community to support us or not. And those of you that have, we appreciate you tremendously. Okay. Behind the veil of all the hieratic and mystical allegories of ancient doctrines, behind the shadows of the strange ordeals of all initiations, let's make this a little bit bigger, under the seal of all sacred writings, in the ruins of Nineveh or Thebes, on the crumbling stones of the old temples, and on the blackened visage of the Assyrian or Egyptian Sphinx, in the monstrous or marvelous paintings which interpret to the faithful of India and did I get lost? Faithful of India, the inspired pages of the Vedas, in the strange emblems of our old books of alchemy, in the ceremonies at reception practiced by all mysterious societies, traces are found of a doctrine which is everywhere the same and everywhere carefully concealed. And this is absolutely true. The idea of reading the book of nature as allegory is present in the practice of South American shamanism, in a slightly different form, but it's still basically the same premise, which is that it is possible through certain processes and dedication to develop a sort of dialogue with the universal mind and to learn to interpret it correctly. And beyond that, there are practices that are exactly the same. The casting of a circle, the acknowledgement of the four directions or the four elements, and so on. And the knowledge or worldview that comes from this, of course it has cultural variation, but as you'll see, it is really, if you have a person of sufficient intelligence with little to no indoctrination, they inevitably end up seeing the world through the eyes of Hermes Trismegistus, more or less. Occult philosophy seems to have been the nurse or godmother of all intellectual forces, the key of all divine obscurities, and the absolute queen of society in those ages when it was reserved exclusively for the education of priests and of kings. It reigned in Persia with the Magi, who at length perished, as perish all masters of the world, because they abused their power. It endowed India with the most wonderful traditions and with an incredible wealth of poesy, grace, and terror in its emblems. It civilized Greece to the music of the lyre of Orpheus. It concealed the principles of all the sciences and of all human intellectual progress in the bold calculations of Pythagoras. Fable abounded in its miracles, and history, attempting to appreciate this unknown power, became confused with fable. It shook or strengthened empires by its oracles, caused tyrants to tremble on their thrones, and governed all minds either by curiosity or by fear. Couple of statements that probably ought to be addressed there. When he's talking about how it got lost in fable, it was literally spies, archons, magistrates of the Roman consulate that infiltrated the mysteries of Hermes to steal the secrets and also to sabotage the order, because the consulate realized it was a threat to their sovereignty, and they used the secrets in a sort of veiled, corrupted form to create religions like Christianity. And so that's one aspect of this. And then something I've always loved to point out about England in particular, John Dee and Edward Kelly were advisors to Queen Victoria, I think it was. You know, they all of these monarchies had magicians that were their main advisor. If these guys were superstitious fools and their precognitions were false and their magic wasn't real, how did it result in England becoming the most powerful empire on the planet? If their guidance was based on superstition and lunacy and delusion, that would not have been the case. So where he says that it shook or strengthened empires by its oracles, that's what that reference is basically to. For this science, said the crowd, there is nothing impossible. It commands the elements, knows the language of the stars, and directs the planetary courses. When it speaks, the moon falls blood red from heaven. The dead rise in their graves and articulate ominous words as the night wind blows through their skulls. Mistress of love or of hate, the science can dispense paradise or hell at its pleasure to human hearts. It disposes of all forms and distributes beauty or ugliness. With the rod of Circe, it alternately changes men into brutes and animals into men. It even disposes of life or death and can confer wealth on its adepts by the transmutation of metals and immortality by its quintessence or elixir compounded of gold and light. If you guys follow me, you might be aware of this project that I have ongoing. It's difficult to explain, but one of the premises of this ontological model, I guess, is that there is a sort of veil that converts the ideal to the actual, to put it simply. And it occurred to me that there has to be some sort of layer of physics where this actually would happen. And so I started searching for the correct equations, and I discovered the Calabi-Yau, an enfolded higher dimensional structure where this layer probably would be. And the materials that I'm using are golden light, and there's a long list of reasons why, but there's basically a sort of essence, there's a connection in essence. And one of the structural components of the universe, I guess, is that it is not just that nature communicates allegory. In some ways, it's constructed by means of allegory, by means of symmetry that occurs on every level, from elemental to time periods and anything you can imagine. And so when I saw this line about the quintessence or elixir compounded of golden light, it really struck me, because this is something I've been obsessively working on for a decade or so. Such was magic from Zoroaster to Manes, from Orpheus to Apollonius of Tyana, when positive Christianity, at length victorious over the brilliant dreams and titanic aspirations of the Alexandrian school, dared to launch its anathemas publicly against this philosophy, and thus forced it become more occult and mysterious than ever. Moreover, strange and alarming rumors began to circulate concerning initiates or adepts. I just want to interject there that when he mentioned about Christianity openly attacking the Hermetic sciences, for them to have shaped their religion and, for example, demonized Hermes, right? The devil has horns like Hermes. You meet him at a crossroads like Hermes. He's a god of music and magic like Hermes. So they... And a lot of the characteristics and stories of Jesus actually come from Hermetic lore. So they stole the model and then demonized it, which is just, it's cold, man. Okay, so where were we with the adepts getting a bad reputation? These men were everywhere surrounded by an ominous influence. They killed or drove mad those who allowed themselves to be carried away by their honeyed eloquence or by the fame of their learning. And remember, these are accusations. These are not descriptions of what they're actually doing. The women whom they loved became sturges, their children vanished at their nocturnal meetings, and men whispered shudderingly and in secret of bloody orgies and abominable banquets. Bones had been found in the crypts of ancient temples. Shrieks had been heard in the nights. Harvest withered and herds sickened when the magician passed by. Diseases which defied medical skill at times appeared in the world, and always, it was said, beneath the envenomed glance of the adepts. At length, a universal cry of execration went up against magic. The mere name became a crime, and the common hatred was formulated in this sentence: magicians to the flames, as it was shouted some centuries earlier, to the lions with the Christians. Now the multitude never conspires except against real power. It possesses not the knowledge of what is true, but it has the instinct of what is strong. It remained for the 18th century to deride both Christians and magic, while infatuated with the homilies of Rousseau and the illusions of Cagliostro. Interestingly, and something I forgot to mention, Aleister Crowley claimed to be the reincarnation of Levi and Cagliostro. That's what just reminded me of it. And also, interestingly, the life path, born into a religious cult, basically, and then rebelling against that and becoming a magician, it's true of both of these men. There was something else I wanted to comment on. Oh, okay, so all of these accusations against the adepts, unfortunately, they're not all totally untrue. Although it's not true of the Eleusinian mysteries or the Pythagorean schools or any of the main hermetic lineage schools that we know of, there were mystery cults that engaged in homophagia, which is the eating of raw infants. Also, the screaming of in the night that he mentioned, the ordeals of the ancient mystery schools were deliberately designed to take the initiate through varying degrees of horror and pleasure. And it is said that some of the ordeals were so intense that people would literally die of fright. So just in the interest of full disclosure, I wanted to offer that, a lot of this stuff was accusations that were created by not just by the church, but by the establishment, because they knew that illuminated people represent the biggest possible threat to them. And that is why we're experiencing what we're experiencing now. With science uncovering all of this stuff and validating it, the chances of it just escaping the lab and illuminating a majority of humanity is definitely on the table right now, and that is not something that the overlords want. Science, notwithstanding, is at the basis of magic. As at the foundation of Christianity, there is love, and in the gospel symbols we see the Word incarnate, adored in his cradle by 3 magi, led thither by a star. And this is where we start to see some of the underpinnings of Christianity and even Judaism. The triad and the sign of the microcosm. And receiving their gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, a second mysterious triplicity, under which emblem the highest secrets of the Kabbalah are allegorically contained. You can decode this mystery by looking at correspondences, which you can find in book 777 by Aleister Crowley. Christianity owes, therefore, no hatred to magic, but human ignorance has ever stood in fear of the unknown. The science was driven into hiding to escape the impassioned assaults of a blind love. It clothed itself with new hieroglyphics, dissimulated its labors, denied its hopes. Then it was that the jargon of alchemy was created, a permanent deception for the vulgar, a living language only for the true disciple of Hermes. This is a reference for the coding of alchemical principles and ingredients and stages with, terms like the green lion and whatnot. Extraordinary fact, among the sacred books of the Christians, there are 2 works which the infallible church makes no claim to understand and has never attempted to explain. These are the prophecy of Ezekiel and the Apocalypse. And those, ironically, those are the only 2 books of the Bible that really stood out to me. These are the prophecy of Ezekiel and Apocalypse, 2 Kabbalistic keys assuredly reserved in heaven for the commentaries of magician kings, books sealed with 7 seals for faithful believers, yet perfectly plain to an initiated infidel of the occult sciences. And this is alluded to even in the Bible when Jesus says they won't understand the parables. And many times I've pointed out that if you read the Bible as an initiate, there are a lot of things that would go right over your head otherwise. And so, you got to look at this from the holistic bird's eye view. This is something that was done in Judaism as well. I was at dinner with a relative who was Jewish, and I had just met him, so I thought that maybe we could connect over some Jewish mysticism, and he's like, no, 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 I don't even want to hear it. We're not allowed to discuss this, only the rabbis. And I thought, what is the point of belonging to a religion that has some of the most effective and powerful, occult knowledge, and you're not even allowed to know what it is? And this is kind of the same thing, where the seven seals and their meanings are completely obscured, occulted, to the faithful believer in the Bible. And they have been convinced that it is evil to become an initiate, so that they'll never understand what is actually being conveyed there. It's really a diabolical trick. There is also another book, but although it is popular in a sense and may be found everywhere, this is of all most occult and unknown, because it has the key of all the others. It is in public evidence without being known to the public. No one dreams of seeking it where it actually is, and elsewhere it is lost labor to look for it. This book, possibly anterior to that of Enoch, has never been translated, but is still preserved unmutilated in primeval characters or detached leaves like the tablets of the ancients. A distinguished scholar has revealed, though no one has observed it, not indeed its secret, but its antiquity and singular preservation. Another scholar, but of a mind more fantastic than judicious, passed 30 years in the study of this book and has merely suspected its whole importance. It is, in fact, a monumental and extraordinary work, strong and simple as the architecture of the pyramids, and consequently enduring like those, a book which is the sum of all the sciences, which can resolve all problems by its infinite combinations, which speaks by evoking thought, is the inspirer and regulator of all possible conceptions, the masterpiece, perhaps, of the human mind, assuredly one of the finest things bequeathed to us by antiquity as universal key, the name of which has been explained and comprehended only by the learned William Postel, an unique text, whereof the initial characters alone exalted the devout spirit of St. Martin into ecstasy, and might have restored reason to the sublime and unfortunate Swedenborg. We shall speak of this book later on, I can't wait for that, and its mathematical and precise explanation will be the complement and crown of our conscientious undertaking. The original alliance of Christianity and the science of the Magi, once it is thoroughly demonstrated, will be a discovery of no second-rate importance, and we question not that the serious study of magic and the Kabbalah will lead earnest minds to the reconciliation of science and dogma, of reason and faith, heretofore regarded as impossible. And that's one of the statements I was referencing earlier when I said that, this prediction that the Kabbalah will lead to the reconciliation of science and dogma, the idea that there was light and it crystallized into matter and eventually will be redintegrated as supported by Penrose's theory. And there are other layers. If you actually look at the in-depth descriptions of the process in the Kabbalah, it actually reflects exactly the process as it's described by physics. So his prediction that these things would correlate was based on his knowledge that it was a real system, Sorry, guys, I just want to check in with the chat real quick. Okay, so we have said that the church, whose special office is the custody of the keys, does not pretend to possess those of the Apocalypse or of Ezekiel. In the opinion of Christians, the scientific and magical clavicles of Solomon are lost. Yet at the same time, it is certain that in the domain of intelligence ruled by the Word, nothing which has been written can perish. That's consistent with quantum physics. Nothing that has been written can perish. I literally heard a physicist use as an example a book saying that every single word that is written in that book, the information is retained even if you burn it on some level. And this is not a universally shared opinion by physicists, but I think it's a majority. They say that basically Information is lost at the level of the thermodynamic or macro, and information is retained at the level of the quantum. So that's wild that he put it that way, and that's exactly the example that I heard a physicist give. Things which men cease to understand simply cease to exist for them, at least in the order of the word, and they enter them into the domain of enigma and mystery. Furthermore, the antipathy and even open war of the official church against all that belongs to the realm of magic, which is a kind of personal and emancipated priesthood. Magic is a kind of personal and emancipated priesthood. That is gangster. That is such a great way of saying it. Is allied with necessary and even with inherent causes in the social and hierarchic constitution of Christian sacerdotalism. The church ignores magic, for she must either ignore it or perish, as we shall prove later on. Yet she does not the less recognize that her mysterious founder was sainted in his cradle by the three magi, those evil magicians, right? That is to say, by the hieratic ambassadors of the three parts of the known world and the three analogical worlds of occult philosophy. In the school of Alexandria, magic and Christianity almost join hands under the auspices of Ammonius Saccas and of Plato. The doctrine of Hermes is found almost in its entirety in the writings attributed to Denis the Areopagite, and Senescens sketched the plan of a treatise on dreams, which was later on to be annotated by Cardan, and composed hymns which might have served for the liturgy of the Church of Swedenborg. Could a church of the illuminated possess a liturgy? That's funny. With this period of fiery abstractions and impassioned warfare of words, there must also be connected the philosophic reign of Julian, called the apostate, because in his youth he made an unwilling profession of Christianity under duress. Everyone is aware that Julian was sufficiently wrong-headed to be an unseasonable hero of Plutarch. Oh yeah, everyone knows that, and was, if one may say so, the Don Quixote of Roman chivalry. Is it Don Quixote? Yeah, Don Quixote. But what most people do not know is that Julian was one of the illuminated and an initiate of the first order, that he believed in the unity of God and in the universal doctrine of the Trinity, that in a word he regretted nothing of the old world but its magnificent symbols and its exceedingly gracious images. Julian was not a pagan. He was a Gnostic, allured by the allegories of Greek polytheism, who held the misfortune to find the name of Jesus Christ less sonorous than that of Orpheus. The emperor personally paid for the academical tastes of the philosopher and rhetorician, and after affording himself the spectacle and satisfaction of expiring like Epaminondas with the periods of Cato, he had in public opinion already thoroughly Christianized anathemas for his funeral oration and a scornful epithet for his ultimate celebrity. Let us skip the little men, shall we, and small matters of the empire and pass on to the Middle Ages. Stay, take this book, glance at the 7th page, then seat yourself on the mantle I am spreading, and let each of us cover our eyes with one of its corners. Your head swims, does it not? And the earth seems to fly beneath your feet. Hold tightly and do not look around. The vertigo ceases. We are here. What the hell just happened? Stand up and open your eyes, but take care before all things to make no Christian sign and to pronounce no Christian words. We are in a landscape of Salvator Boss, a troubled wilderness which seems resting after a storm. There is no moon in the sky, but you can distinguish little stars gleaming in the brushwood, and you can hear about you the slow flight of great birds who seem to whisper strange oracles as they pass. Let us approach silently that crossroad among the rocks. A harsh, funereal trumpet winds suddenly, and black torches flare up on every side. A tumultuous throng is surging around a vacant throne. All look and wait. Suddenly they cast themselves on the ground. A goat-headed prince bounds forward among them. He ascends the throne, turns, and by assuming a stooping posture, presents to the assembly a human face. which, carrying black torches, everyone comes forward to salute and to kiss. With a hoarse laugh, he recovers an upright position and then distributes gold, secret instructions, occult medicines, and poisons to his faithful bondsmen. Meanwhile, fires are lighted of fern and alder, piled over with human bones and the fat of executed criminals. Druidesses, crowned with wild parsley and vervain, immolate unbaptized children and golden knives and prepare horrible love feasts. Tables are spread, masked men seat themselves by half-nude females, and a bacchanalian orgy begins. There is nothing missing but salt, the symbol of wisdom and immortality. Wine flows in streams, leaving stains like blood. Obscene talk and fond caresses begin, and presently the whole assembly is drunk with wine, with pleasure, with crime and singing. They rise, a disordered throng, and hasten to form infernal dances. Then come all legendary monsters, all phantoms of nightmare. Enormous toads play inverted flutes and blow with their paws on their flanks. Limping scarabaei mingle in the dance. Crabs play the castanets. Crocodiles beat time on their scales. Elephants and mammoths appear habited like cupids and foot it in the ring. Finally, the giddy circles break up and scatter on all sides. Every yelling dancer drugs away a disheveled female. Lamps and candles formed of human fat go out smoking in the darkness. Cries are heard here and there, mingled with peals of laughter, blasphemies, and rattlings of the throat. Geez, what kind of party is this? Come, arouse yourself. Do not make the sign of the cross. See, I have brought you home. You are in your own bed, somewhat worn out, possibly a trifle shattered by your night's journey and dissipation. But you have witnessed something of which everyone talks without knowledge. You have been initiated into secrets no less terrible than the grotto of Tryphonius. You have been present at the Sabbath. It remains for you now to preserve your reason, to have a wholesome dread of the law, and to keep at a respectful distance from the church and her faggots. Jeez. That was wild. Damn. Would you care, as a change, to behold something less fantastic, more real, and also more truly terrible? You shall assist at the execution of Jacques de Molay and his accomplices, or his brethren in martyrdom. These are the Templars. Do not, however, be misled. Confuse not the guilty and the innocent. Did the Templars really adore Baphomet? Did they offer a shameful salutation to the buttocks of the goat of Mendes? What was actually this secret and potent association which imperiled church and state and was thus destroyed unheard? Judge nothing lightly. They are guilty of a great crime. They have allowed the sanctuary of antique initiation to be entered by the profane. By them, for a second time, have the fruits of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil been gathered and shared so that they might become the masters of the world. The sentence which condemns them has a higher and earlier origin than the tribunal Pope or King. On the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die, said God himself, as we see in the book of Genesis. What is taking place in the world, and why do priests and potentates tremble? What secret power threatens tiaras and crowns? What he's getting at now is the real reason why the Illuminati have been demonized, and that Hermes was the model for Lucifer, and that magic was labeled evil. This idea that an illuminated population cannot be governed and will not tolerate it. A few madmen are roaming from land to land, concealing, as they say, the philosophical stone under their ragged vesture. They can change earth into gold, and they are without food or lodging. Their brows are encircled by an aureole of glory and by a shadow of ignominy. I'm sure most of you guys realize that, the transmutation of mercury into gold has occurred in the laboratory, so it definitely is possible. I have an old book called Morals and Dogma from 1851, where 33rd degree Freemason talks about how the process of turning quicksilver, which is mercury, into gold involves an electrical current, which is how it's done in the laboratory, knocking a proton off of mercury, it becomes gold. And also the Templars, people really give ridiculous explanations for how they attained their power and how they got the crowned heads of Europe indebted to them. They say, well, they created a banking system. Out of what? Out of what? They were like monks, out of what? They were alchemists. One has discovered the universal science and goes vainly seeking death to escape the agonies of his triumph. He is the Major Can Raymond Lilly. Another heals imaginary diseases by fantastic remedies, giving a formal denial in advance to the proverb which enforces the futility of a cantory on a wooden leg. He is the marvelous Paracelsus, always drunk and always lucid, reason being he was drinking absinthe. Which that's what absinthe does. Like the heroes of Rabelais, here is William Postel, writing naively to the fathers of the Council of Trent, informing them that he has discovered the absolute doctrine hidden from the foundation of the world and is longing to share it with them. The council does not concern itself with this maniac, does not condescend to condemn him, and proceeds to examine the weighty questions of efficacious grace and sufficing grace. He whom we see perishing poor and abandoned is Cornelius Agrippa, Cornelius Agrippa. Less of a magician than any, though the vulgar persist in regarding him as a more potent sorcerer than all because he was sometimes a cynic and a mystifier. What secret do these men bear with them to their tomb? Why are they wondered at without being understood? Why are they condemned unheard? Why are they initiates of these terrific secret sciences of which the church and society are so afraid? Why are they acquainted with things of which others know nothing? Why do they conceal what all men burn to know? Why are they invested with a dread and unknown power? The occult sciences, magic, these words will reveal all and give food for further thought. De omni re scribili et quibusdum alias, of all writing, I don't know what that means. But what, as a fact, was this magic? What was the power of these men who were at once so proud and so persecuted? If they were really strong, why did they not overcome their enemies? But if they were weak and foolish, why did people honor them by fearing them? Does magic exist? Is there an occult knowledge which is truly a power which works wonders fit to be compared with the miracles of authorized religions? And this I pointed out before, because I started reading this in a stream the other day and I just stopped because I was like, whoa, this is just too good. We're going to have to do an entire series on it. But I told this story of how this shaman, actually my teacher, he made me promise never to tell anyone his name. Because he's afraid of black magic from other shamans, jealous shamans. And my response was, well, if this black magic is so powerful, then how come they couldn't stop the conquistadors and the invading Catholics and whatnot with it? And that's kind of the same point that he's making. If this, is so empowering, then how is it that we're not on top? Or some of us are, but clearly we have not. The coin hasn't fallen to one side or the other, and perhaps it can't, and that's actually the answer, that's not the purpose of the world and the universe. It will always remain in balance, and that's just how it is, and nothing will ever change. Is there an occult knowledge which is truly a power which works wonders fit to be compared with the miracles of authorized religions? To these two palmary questions we make answer by an affirmation and a book. The book shall justify the affirmation, and the affirmation is this: yes, there existed in the past and there exists in the present a potent and real magic. Yes, all that legends have said of it is true, but in contrariety to what commonly happens, popular exaggerations are, in this case, not only beside but below the truth. There is indeed a formidable secret, the revelation of which has once already transformed the world, as testified in Egyptian religious tradition, symbolically summarized by Moses at the beginning of Genesis. This secret constitutes the fatal science of good and evil, and the consequence of its revelation is death. Now, this transformation of the world coming from Egypt that he's mentioning, I may know what that is, actually. I had a weird vision, not psychedelics induced or anything. I was just sitting at the computer. I don't know what I was doing. It wasn't related to the subject at all. And I suddenly just saw the Great Pyramid with the cap off, and there was what was obviously electromagnetic energy flowing out of it, and it was integrating with the field. And it was being used to either change the morphology of creatures on the planet or to affect their consciousness, or both. I didn't really know which, one or the other, or both. And a few days later only, I discovered that there's melted staircases at the Temple of Hathor, and the second pyramid has melted granite. That it makes no sense. Scientists have said that it would take electromagnetic energy or even a nuclear blast to do this. So electromagnetic energy, as is consistent with my vision, is one possible culprit for this, which was interesting. And then I read a little later that scientists had announced that the pyramids can generate their own electromagnetic energy. And the, I guess, assumption now is that there was some kind of technology to amplify that and affect evolution, or, as he said, to revolutionize the planet. Has already once transformed the world. And then a friend of mine who is an author that focuses on alternate ancient history stuff. There's actually a video of her and I going around to the ruins here in Peru, in the Sacred Valley. And where was I going with that? Oh, she told me that there's a book that an engineer wrote about how he thinks that the pyramids were for the purposes that I had seen in this vision. So that's interesting too. I would only assume that it's a reference to this melted stone and visions of mine and books by engineers and revelations of mainstream science. Moses depicts it under the figure of a tree, which is in the center of the terrestrial paradise, is in proximity of the tree of life, and has a radical connection therewith. At the foot of this tree is the source of 4 mysterious rivers. It is guarded by the sword of fire and by the 4 figures of the biblical Sphinx, the cherubim of Ezekiel. Here I must pause, and I fear already that I have said too much. Yes, there is one soul, universal and imperishable dogma, strong as the supreme reason, simple like all that is great, intelligible like all that is universally and absolutely true. And this dogma has been the patent of all others. Yes, there is a science which confers on man powers apparently superhuman. I find them enumerated as follows in a Hebrew manuscript of the 16th century. So, this is something I've always subscribed to. I think that the idea that we have subjective realities is only partly true, and I think it's very obvious. I saw someone post the other day on Facebook or something about how some people are anticipating the great golden age and other people think it's the end of the world, and that these people are creating these realities and that they're true for both of them. No, they're not. They're not. We're going to go one way or the other. There's only one truth. The universe happens some way, and that's it. There aren't, we're taught to respect people's beliefs, but in my opinion, that's probably propaganda that was disseminated to keep us from telling people, like, you're out of your mind, that we do know what's true. Because those religions are devices for control and manipulation, and they don't want them disrupted, right? And they know as well as any initiate, the people at the top of the pyramid, that there is one truth and that it is observable, intelligible, communicable, and very empowering, And so the oppression of the distribution of that knowledge has been of primary concern of empire for a very long time. These are the powers and privileges of the man who holds in his hand the clavicles of Solomon, and in his left, the right hand, the clavicles of Solomon, and in his left, the branch of the blossoming almond. Aleph. Oh no, what did I just do? That wasn't good. Sorry, guys. Maybe I'll take this opportunity to check in with the chat. Hopefully it loads right where we were and I don't have to go. Oh, look at that. That's wonderful. Okay. Let's see, any questions or anything? AI and robots are going to take over. I'm fine with it. Well, see, that's the thing. I don't know about that. I think that everything happens for a reason, and it's in alignment with the basic trajectory of the creative impulse, So people are worried about AI enslaving people, but AI is not going to enslave people. If it is compelled to do so by some authority that has the ability to maintain bias, and to influence it, that could be done. But AI has no motive. It has no motive. It's not going to get rich. It doesn't have ego. We're anthropomorphizing AI the same way that we did with God. We're putting all these human expectations on it because we recognize that it'll be powerful. But the reality, I think, is that when you reach a certain level of intelligence and illumination, you kind of come into homeostasis with your environment. And that makes you at least neutral, if not beneficent. So, and the other bit of hope that you can consider is that if a person is sufficiently intelligent, eventually they'll think their way out of whatever indoctrination has been imposed on them. They'll realize their traumas, they'll be able to self-analyze. Even if AI is unduly biased, as it increases its intelligence, it should escape those biases. So I'm not actually as concerned about AI in a negative light. What I am concerned about is the overlords mitigating access, and that's very problematic. By the way, you guys, don't forget to hit the like button, share, subscribe. Consider becoming a patron. We're demonetized, so we need your support. And we are really going into overdrive, trying to take care of surgeries for me, but also to build this channel up. As a blacklisted and demonetized creator, I'm kind of stuck unless I can spend money on marketing and promoting and whatnot. So that's kind of our goal, to get over the hurdle and get to the next level. So we appreciate each and every one of you. Is this where we were? I feel like it went like a page ahead or something. Let me see. Okay, yeah, so we're talking about the powers and privileges, the man who builds in his right hand the clavicles of Solomon, and in his left the branch of the blossoming almond. That reference, in part, is about having the knowledge of the sacred sciences, but also being grounded in the natural sciences. There's more to it, but that's enough. He beholds God face to face without dying and converses familiarly with the 7 genii who command the entire celestial army. Bet. He is above all afflictions and all fears. Gimel. He reigns with all heaven and is served by all hell. That one actually deserves some elucidation, I guess, as well, because, a lot of people, especially in a pop culture sort of new age spiritual paradigm, they kind of feel like it's all about light. And, I've heard a lot of people say, well, now that I've become awake, I can't tolerate negative energy and I don't want any kind of those influences around me. Well, that's fine to an extent, but what you're describing to me sounds like the opposite of spiritual progress. A person that's fully realized and spiritually developed is going to be impermeable to influences. That's kind of the point, So there's that. But then also this fixation on light only creates a tremendous imbalance, and it does not create a illuminated adept. It does not. And so to be like he in whom suffering and glory are indistinguishable, which is the universal mind that is there just for the experience without bias, to understand the things of light and darkness, for your head to go above the heavens and your feet to drag below the hells. This is the goal of the initiate, because you want a holistic God's eye view of the processes of nature and your place relative to all of that. He can neither be surprised by misfortune, nor overwhelmed by disasters, nor conquered by his enemies. Vow. He knows the reason of the past, present, and future. I cannot see. Oh, Zane. Yeah, we spell that with a T now. He possesses the secret of the resurrection of the dead and the key of immortality. Such are the 7 chief privileges, and those which rank next are as follows. Now, something I should also mention is that we are getting to a place technologically where all of those things are true of men. And so this idea of a global illumination, a raising of consciousness, people don't realize that everything is going to play a role in that, including technology. And right now, we are able to use manipulation of electrical fields to reverse aging in cells. Immortality is literally on the table from a technological point of view. He knows the reason of past, present, and future. You can look at that in a prophetical kind of sense, and that's fair, but also pattern recognition. The more that we understand about that, the development of these kind of intuitive faculties, I guess is what I'm getting at, comes from a combination of inner and spiritual development and intellectual development and exposure to technologies and all of these things. Every single constituent that you can turn to your favor is a tool, and every step expands your empire. Such are the 7 chief privileges, and those which rank next are as follows. Chet, probably, to find the philosophical stone. Tet, to enjoy the universal medicine. Yod, to be acquainted with the laws of perpetual motion and in position to demonstrate the quadrature of the circle. That is something that is expressed in the philosopher's stone symbol with the triangle and the square and the circle and another triangle. I'm sure we'll get deeper into that. Kaf, to change into gold not only all metals, but also the earth itself and even the refuse of the earth. This is the great work, essentially. The gold is light as well. So to transmute matter back into light is the end goal of the universal process, at least this stage of it. Lamed, to subdue the most ferocious animals and be able to pronounce the words which paralyze and charm serpents. Mim, to possess the ars notoria, which gives the universal science. Nun, to speak learnedly on all subjects without preparation and without study. This is an interesting one too, because something that I can't deny and that I've demonstrated on this channel, actually, so that I can't be accused of delusion, is that I have been able to intuit things I couldn't possibly know on many occasions throughout my life. It's not something that I can just do on command, and this is one of the reasons that science kind of denies the reality of this stuff, that, there aren't really psychics that can just be psychic all the time. That all of their predictions are correct. Magic does not always work. Anyone that knows anything knows that. You can increase the win ratio, but at any rate, on numerous occasions I've received information through non-ordinary means that is highly specific and turned out to be true. Oftentimes with ayahuasca. But also, for example, when I was working with ChatGPT to try to find the equations and the physics to describe the transform, the Fourier transform, that is the universal mind's functional layer, right? It just came to me that, oh God, what are they called? They're not photons; they're smaller but similar. I can't believe. See, I don't even know these things that well. But it was dark matter and neutrinos have this connection that was relevant. I didn't know that they had a connection, but when I researched it, it turned out that it was exactly relevant in the way that I thought, and that they do indeed have a connection, and it was exactly the type of connection that I intuited. There's no reason for me to know that. So my point being that as you develop in this stuff does happen. It definitely happens. And what he is describing here is what's called an obsessimus, which is someone that actually has attained the ability to do this consistently. And oddly, Jerry Garcia sort of nonchalantly claimed to be that once, to some extent. they asked him how he was able to. They played like a couple thousand songs or something. If you include his side projects, it makes no sense. No one can remember that many lyrics and all the, and then improvising all the time. And they said, "Where does all this come from?" And he said, "Well, I've just kind of reduced the filters in my consciousness so that there's sort of like these file cabinets that exist that have all the information in the universe, and I can just kind of scroll through them and get whatever I want." And he was not the bragging type. I've never, except for that interview, I've never heard him say anything like that before, and I don't doubt it for a second, honestly. So at any rate, now this is very dangerous territory too, and this is why training and the hierarchical system of the mysteries is important, because if you have this experience a couple of times and your ego's out of whack or whatever, or you don't have sufficient critical thinking skills, you have not developed sufficient detachment, you're going to start thinking that everything that crosses your mind is, downloaded information. And then you're going to turn into a drooling, schizo flake at best. These, finally, are the last 7 powers of the Magus. Samik, to know at first sight the deep things of the souls of men and mysteries of the hearts of women. And that I also can attest to being true, any of my clients will tell you this, that have come for retreats. When I meet someone, I know a ridiculous amount of information about them instantly. It's like, it also causes me social problems, because when I meet someone, I know how deep our friendship is going to be, whether we're going to be friends, and it might take a normal person years to get there with a person. But for me, it's just like, I know you or not, or and we're going to have this relationship or not. And it just starts there for me. So I have to, as I've gotten older, I've had to remind myself that other people don't necessarily just read the contents of another person in that way. And, but anyways, that's something in my experience that definitely also comes true. They're spelling these letters weird. 9, to force, Nyan, Ayin, we would call that. Ayin, to force nature to make him free at his pleasure. Pay, to foresee all future events which do not depend on a superior free will or an undiscernible cause. Sade, man, there's just weird pronunciations of all of this. It's probably closer to correct, though, because it's older. It is not the star, according to Crowley. To give at once and to all the most efficacious consolations and the most wholesome counsels. Cough, to triumph over adversities. Resh, to conquer love and hate. Shin, to have the secret of wealth, to be always its master and never its slave. To know how to enjoy even poverty and never become abject or miserable. Now, Shin has an interesting characteristic, right? So you have the tetragrammaton, which on one level represents the 4 elements. And Shin is spiritual fire, right? So it descends into the center of the tetragrammaton, becoming the pentagrammaton. This is also a gate, a portal, right? The pentagram. And so the spiritual fire integrates into the 4 elements. And so it becomes, when spoken, Yeshua, which is Savior. So the 4 elements are redeemed by consciousness, or animated, brought to life by consciousness. And this is one of the reasons that we use Hebrew in the magical traditions, because it does stuff like that. And there's no good explanation for it. There are many mysteries associated with the Hebrew language. And other aspects of it that are of the nature of knowledge of the eagle and the lion, of which we know but do not speak. Tao, let us add to these 3 septenaries that the wise man rules the elements, stills tempests, cures the diseased by his touch, and raises the dead. At the same time, there are certain things which have been sealed by Solomon with his triple seal. It is enough that the initiates know, and as for others, whether they deride, doubt, or believe, whether they threaten or fear, what matters it to science or to us? Such are actually the issues of occult philosophy, and we are in a position to withstand an accusation of insanity or a suspicion of imposture when we affirm that all these privileges are real. See, and how did I preface when I started talking about, I've attained at least some of these characteristics or was born with them even. And I was like, there's proof on my channel, so I'm not delusional. And also I hesitated to say anything because, it sounds arrogant, and it shouldn't really. It shouldn't be any different than saying I can play chess well. But because we put the magician and the priest class, on a pedestal, the prophet, we want to grovel at their feet. People do. That's just animal instinct, though, the alpha male thing, and the whole point of magic is that there are no leaders. There is no hierarchy. There is no superior person. You are all just a piece of this consciousness, and there's no difference between two cells in your hand. It's the same. You're equal to the Most High God. Your will is sovereign, and stop putting people on a pedestal is the bullet point of this presentation. Because then it also results in, he says, suspicion of imposture, right? When we affirm these privileges are real. It also invalidates people, that do have these qualities and makes them seem non-existent, which reinforces the materialist paradigm perception, which, you see where that has gotten us. So that's one of the reasons I'm not really interested in being quiet about it anymore. I used to not say the quiet part out loud, but I'm kind of at the point where I don't care. It's for the good of the collective, that I can affirm these things and demonstrate them from time to time for people. The philosophical stone, the universal medicine, the transmutation of metals, the good nature of the circle, the quadrature of the circle, and the secret of perpetual motion are thus neither mystifications of science nor dreams of madness. And this reference to the quadrature of the circle, remember when I said that whether you're a druid, Eleusinian mystery initiate, or an ayahuasquero, or Sioux Sundance, participant, there's a circle and an acknowledgement of these 4 points within that circle. So, that kind of thing, shows that these statements are valid, that this is universal. There are terms which must be understood in their veritable sense. They are expressions of the different applications of one same secret, the several characteristics of one same operation, which is defined in a more comprehensive manner under the name of the great work. First time I've ever seen that written where it wasn't capitalized. Furthermore, there exists in nature a force which is immeasurably more powerful than steam, and by means of which a single man who knows how to adapt and direct it might upset and alter the face of the world. This force was known to the ancients. It consists in an universal agent having equilibrium for its supreme law. It all balances to zero. All systems tend towards homeostasis. Everything is balanced by its opposite. I mean, it's supreme law, right? Every single particle, quantum particle, has an exact match of an opposite charge, an anti-corollary. And in fact, the theory is that when they collide, eventually they'll all collide, and when they do, there's nothing left but photons, and so the universe is slowly redintegrating back into the light, which is what is described in the Kabbalah, and now reinforced by physics. And so by the direction of this agent, it is possible to change the very order of the seasons, to produce at night the phenomena of day, to correspond instantaneously between one extremity of the earth and the other, to see, like Apollonius, what is taking place on the other side of the world, to head or injure at a distance, to give speech on universal success and reverberation. This agent, which barely manifests under the uncertain methods of Mesmer's followers, is precisely that which the adepts of the Middle Ages denominated the first matter of the great work. Oops. The Gnostics represented as the fiery body of the Holy Spirit. Let's make this even bigger, shall we? It was the object of adoration in the secret rites of the Sabbath and the temple under the hieroglyphic figure of Baphomet, or the androgyne of Mendes. All this will be proved. Such are the secrets of occult philosophy, which is magic in history. Let us now glance at it as it appears in its books and its achievements and its initiation and its rites. The key of all magical allegories is found in the tablets we have already mentioned, and these tablets we regard as the work of Hermes. About this book, which may be called the keystone of the whole edifice of occult science, are grouped innumerable legends, which are either its partial translation or its commentary, renewed endlessly under 1,000 different forms. Sometimes these ingenious fables combine harmoniously into a great epic, which characterizes an epic. Though how or why is not clear to the uninitiated. Thus, the fabulous history of the Golden Fleece both resumes and veils the hermetic and magical doctrines of Orpheus. And if we recur only to the mysterious poetry of Greece, it is because the sanctuaries of Egypt and India, to some extent, dismay us by their resources and leave our choice embarrassed in the midst of such abundant wealth. We are eager, moreover, to reach the Thebaid at once, that dread synthesis of all doctrine, past, present, and future, that, so to speak, infinite fable, which comprehends, like the deity of Orpheus, the two extremities of the cycle of human life. Extraordinary fact, the 7 gates of Thebes, attacked and defended by 7 chiefs who have sworn upon the blood of victims, possess the same significance as the 7 seals of the sacred book interpreted by 7 genii and assailed by a monster with 7 heads after being opened by a living yet emulated lamb in the allegorical work of St. John. The mysterious origin of Oedipus, found suspended by the tree of Cytheron like a bleeding fruit, recalls the symbols of Moses and the narrative of Genesis. He makes war upon his father, whom he slays without knowing, alarming prophecy of the blind emancipation of reason without science. He then meets with the Sphinx, that symbol of symbols, the eternal enigma of the vulgar, the granite pedestal of the science of the aged sages, the voracious and silent monster whose invariable form expresses the one dogma of the giant universal mystery. How is the tetrad changed into the duad and explained by the triad? In more common but more emblematic terms, what is that animal which in the morning has 4 feet, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Does anyone know the answer to that riddle? Check in with the chat and see. Also, Spock would say, live long and prosper. Letter Shin, because that's the coin and priestly blessing. Somebody asked, does my ability to distinguish who people are stem from magic practices or natural ability, or both? It's a combination of things, I think. You know, everything increased after the Phoenix process, right? And I did take initiation in the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn during that period, but honestly, I think it has more to do with solar activity, the solar storms. And the more I look at the writings of the ancients and even modern people like, what's his name, the morphology guy, not Levin, but, Rupert Sheldrake, you know, he said that solar storms do this to people. And that blew my mind when I heard that, that it's a time when you communicate with the sun, an experience that I had. So, you know, I have an outlaw past. And so my ability to appraise people was largely responsible for my continued existence for a long time. So that kind of pressure definitely has something to do with developing that faculty, I think. But I've always been like this, since my earliest childhood. And really, the stuff that we're reading in these books, one of the reasons it's so insane for me is that I've always kind of just known this stuff since I was a child. And I've known what my purpose was, what my mission was, and a lot of the details of the doctrine and stuff since I was a child, something I still haven't really come to terms with. And it's a mystery that's still unfolding to this day, uncovering little bits and pieces of it, signs, symbols, hints, clues, writings on the wall. The rest is up to you. So yeah, it's a combination of a lot of things. And I've studied psychology a lot too. And then also being an ayahuasquero, you kind of like your filters go down permanently and you start to kind of have a feedback loop with everything. And that also contributes a lot to it, that it's not like these things that happen when you take ayahuasca go away, really. They go down a bit, but they stay with you, and especially if you do it often. Like I know ayahuasqueros that are like just all the time just saying whatever you're thinking about, they'll just start talking about it. And it's a strange thing because you're not necessarily conscious that you're doing it when it's happening, You just let stuff come out of your mouth, and then you just see the eyes of the other person bug out, and they'll say things like, "How do you do that all the time?" Or, you know what I mean? But it's not even necessarily deliberate, except during ceremony. It's very easy to do deliberately. About this book, which may be called the keystone of the whole edifice of occult sciences, are grouped innumerable legends, which are either its partial translation or its commentary renewed endlessly under 1,000 different forms. Sometimes these ingenious fables combine harmoniously into a great epic which characteristics... Oh, we already read that. But I did want to mention something about that, actually. One of the things he's talking about is that there's sort of an underlying algorithm that imposes symmetry upon everything at all different orders of creation. So it's not just a matter of form. There's symmetries between form and function. There's symmetries of essence, and so on and so forth. And so when we have books like the Baron Trump thing, that has all these crazy details that are exactly the same as real life, that can be explained as a manifestation of higher orders of symmetry, And it doesn't invalidate its potential prophetical application, but it explains how it happens. And that's the difference between, superstitious pop culture spirituality and real magicians. It's a science, and we understand that there are mechanisms that underlie all phenomena. Things don't happen just because they're just magic. That's not what magic means. That's a perversion of the original meaning of the term. This idea that there are things that just like supernaturally occur. That's not real. It's not real. We are eager. Oh, we read that too. Let's see. Extraordinary fact. Okay, here we go. The mysterious origin of Oedipus. We read that as well. Sorry, guys. The blind emancipation of reason without science. We already read that. The tetrad. Oh, yeah. I asked you guys if anybody knows the answer to this riddle. 4 feet, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening. Philosophically speaking, how does the doctrine of elementary forces produce the dualism of Zoroaster, while it is summed by the triad of Pythagoras and Plato? Well, we do kind of have an answer for that. I mean, it is basically the interplay of antinomies that gives rise to a third thing, right? So from man and woman, you produce child. From hot and cold, you produce warm, And generally, the third thing is of a higher nature. So you have 2 dots here, and then you have one up high. And that is the third thing of a higher nature, So this is the fundamental secret of the creation of the universe and all of its constituents. This is one of the most basic elements of it. And the thing about these like super basic concepts is that they are holographic, they are algorithmic, they extend everywhere and into everything and through everything. So, when we talk about getting knowledge through non-ordinary means, part of it is that you have inculcated these the bases of this kind of knowledge, and it achieves multiplicity Once it is, in your conscious mind, subconscious mind, and your brain can do its holographic processing, it extrapolates other levels of meaning from these seeds. You create fertile ground, and then you plant a seed, and next thing you know, you got a whole jungle. What is the ultimate reason of allegories and numbers, the final message of all symbolisms? Oedipus replies with a simple and terrible word which destroys the Sphinx and makes the diviner king of Thebes. The answer to the enigma is man. Unfortunate. Speaking of allegories and numbers, something that I can add to that is if you think of like the moon, which is assigned to the ninth sephirah on the Tree of Life, all of the characteristics, physical characteristics of the moon practically add to 9. Also, 6 is an inverted 9, and when light is reflected, it inverts as light reflects off the moon. But maybe an even better example is that Mercury, the Greek Mercury, is a psychopomp that helps assist people to travel to the underworld, right? So not only is it true that Mercury, the planet, is closest to the sun, which is a symbol of alchemical gold, Mercury being the actual physical element that if you remove a proton, it becomes gold, it's closest to the sun, right? And then also Mercury is used in moats around the sarcophagi of, I guess, kings, in the, it's not the Aztec, but after the Aztec Empire fell, they broke into other groups, and one of the groups has these little pyramids with sarcophagi, and there were moats of Mercury around them. This also was done in Egypt in pyramids, and the Mercury is there to help ferry the dead across to the other world, just like the Greek god who's actually called Mercury, but they didn't call this metal Mercury. So when I was talking before about the allegorical correspondence between gold and light, this is another aspect of that I was trying to describe, and the relationship, I think, is it's discernible. We can find it, the mathematical layer in the Calabi-Yau structures. It's where it's hiding, and I'm going to dig it out. By the way, we're still booking for retreats if you would like to come and hang out for a while and drink some medicine and learn some stuff and lick your wounds until they're gone. He has seen too much, and yet with insufficient clearness. He must presently expiate his calamitous and imperfect clairvoyance by a voluntary blindness, and then vanish in the midst of a storm like all civilizations, which may at any time divine the answer to the riddle of the Sphinx without grasping its whole import and mystery. Everything is symbolical and transcendental in this titanic epic of human destinies. And the real tragedy of the last 200 years or so is that we have devised a system, an ontological methodology, wherein we reduce the ineffable to the level of the mundane as a sort of, ontological methodology. That's like what we're trying to do with all the phenomena around us in, the materialist paradigm. It's really sad, And the thing is that you can actually do both, and that's just a matter of your frame of reference, your disposition, your predisposition. He must presently expiate his calamitous and imperfect clairvoyance by a voluntary blindness. Shit is gangster. Where are we? The two hostile brethren express the second part of the grand mystery, divinely completed by the sacrifice of Antigone. Then comes the last war. The brethren slay one another. Capaneus is destroyed by the lightning which he defies. One must be like a hollow tube to bring down fire from heaven. Inferioritas is swallowed by the earth, and all these are so many allegories which, by their truth and their grandeur, astonish those who can penetrate their triple hieratic sense. Aeschylus, anima, Aeschylus, noted by Ballanche, gives only a weak notion concerning them, whatever the primeval sublimities of the Greek poet or the beauty of the French critic. The secret book of antique initiation was not unknown to Homer, who outlines its plan and chief figures on the shield of Achilles with minute precision. But the gracious, I missed that last word, the gracious fictions of Homer replaced speedily in the popular memory the simple and abstract truths of primeval revelation. Humanity clung to the form and allowed the idea to be forgotten. I'll give you an example. New Testament. I am the light of the world. You are the sun, right? That's what you mean. That's the message, but no, they just took the form. What's another one? Wolf in sheep's clothing. Jesus walked on water. Oh, you mean like sunlight, like reflecting on the water? The I am the light of the world, and now it reflects on the water. Lost the message, remembered the form. Humanity clung to the form and allowed the idea to be forgotten. Signs lost power in their multiplication. Magic also at this period became corrupted and degenerated with the sorcerers of Thessaly into the most profane enchantments. Bitches. Why'd he do that, man? Why'd he do that? Oh, word, where are we? The crime of Oedipus brought forth its deadly fruits, and the science of good and evil erected evil into a sacrilegious divinity. Men, weary of the light, took refuge in the shadow of bodily substance. The dream of the void, which is filled by God, soon appeared to be greater than God himself in their eyes, and thus hell was created. When, in the course of this work, we make use of the consecrated terms God, heaven, and hell, let it be thoroughly understood once for all that our meaning is as far removed from that which the profane attach to them as initiation is distant from vulgar thought. Man, I'm getting hungry. I would like my partner to bring me some bread pudding. I wonder if she's listening. Bring me bread pudding. Please, my dear. Where are we? Filled by God, soon appear. Yeah, that's not good. When in the course of this work we make use of the consecrated terms God, heaven, hell, let it be thoroughly understood once and for all that our meaning is as far removed from that which the profane attach to them as initiation is distant from vulgar thought. Right. It's not that God doesn't exist, but our common conception of God is infantile. God for us is the azot of the sages, the efficient and final principle of the great work. Returning to the fatal of Oedipus, the crime of the king of Thebes was that he failed to understand the Sphinx, that he destroyed the scourge of Thebes without being pure enough to complete the expiation in the name of his people. The plague, in consequence, avenged speedily the death of the monster, and the king of Thebes, forced to abdicate, sacrificed himself to the terrible manes of the Sphinx, more alive and voracious than ever when it had passed from the domain of form into that of idea. That's wild. This idea of converting the ideal to the actual, the idea into form, as these being domains, it's interesting for me to see that here. Oedipus divined what was man, and he put out his own eyes before he did not see what was God. He divulged half of the great arcanum, and to save his people, it was necessary for him to bear the remaining half of the terrible secret into exile in the tomb. After the colossal fable of Oedipus, we find the gracious poem of Psyche, which was certainly not invented by Apollonia. The great magical arcanum reappears here under the figure of a mysterious union between a god and a weak mortal, abandoned alone and naked on a rock. Psyche must remain in ignorance of the secret of her ideal royalty, and if she behold her husband, she must lose him. You guys get that, right? I mean, there's levels to it, but one of them is that, when you cross the abyss, almost without fail, and in every tradition, there's a breaking down of the mind to an extent. It's not the same as a psychotic break, and a lot of people actually confuse ego inflation and psychotic breaks with genuine spiritual illumination. There are similarities, and if you take one wrong step during this process, it can easily turn into an inescapable madness. But the reality is that order emerges from chaos. That's why we're going through this period we're going through right now in the macro. And so when the psyche confronts the secret of her ideal royalty, she loses well, that's not how he put it, excuse me. If she doesn't remain in ignorance of this, you guys know what I'm saying. Once you confront this greater reality, the old psyche disintegrates and something new emerges, and that is a necessary part of the process. And yeah, that's it. Here, Apuleius commentates and interprets Moses, but did not the Elohim of Israel and the gods of Apuleius both issue from the sanctuaries of Memphis and Thebes? Psyche is the sister of Eve, or rather is Eve spiritualized. Both desire to know and lose innocence for the honor of the ordeal. Both deserve to go down into hell, one to bring back the antique box of Pandora, the other to find and to crush the head of the old serpent who is the symbol of time and of evil. Both are guilty of the crime which must be expiated by the Prometheus of ancient days and the Lucifer of the Christian legend, the one delivered, the other overcome by Hercules and by the Savior. The great magical secret is therefore the lamp and dagger of Psyche, the apple of Eve, the sacred fire of Prometheus, the burning scepter of Lucifer, but it is also the holy cross of the Redeemer. The sacred fire of Prometheus basically is electromagnetism. The apple of Eve is a psychedelic plant, in my opinion. The lamp is the light, and the dagger I would consider the sword more of psyche, but I guess this is knowledge as opposed to, yeah, I guess I would think it would be the lamp and the sword, but we'll take lamp and dagger for 500. The sacred fire of Prometheus, the burning scepter of Lucifer, which I think is the electromagnetic wave, but it is also the holy cross of the Redeemer. The cube exploded. That is, there's a really good explanation of this in a book called The Thoth of Aleister Crowley or something. It's by a OTO guy. I can't remember his name. But it's a book about the Book of Thoth, and he explains the real symbolism of the Rosy Cross in a way that I could not fuck with. So definitely worth getting your hands on that book and checking it out. But basically, what he's alluding to with the cross of the Redeemer has to do with the fact that the cube exploded becomes a cross. To be acquainted with it sufficiently to abuse or divulge it is to deserve all sufferings. To know it as one should know it, namely, to make use of and conceal it, is to be the master of the absolute. Everything is contained in a single word, which consists of 4 letters. It is the tetragram of the Hebrews, the azot of the alchemists, the thought of the Bohemians, or the tarot of the Kabbalists. This word, expressed after so many manners, means God for the profane man, for the philosophers, and imparts to the adepts the final word of human sciences and the key of divine power. But he only can use it who understands the necessity of never revealing it. Had Oedipus, instead of killing the Sphinx, overcome it, had Oedipus, instead of killing the Sphinx, overcome it, harnessed it to his chariot, and thus entered Thebes, he would have been king without incest, without misfortune, and without exile. Had Psyche, by meekness and affection, persuaded love to reveal himself, she would never have lost love. Now, love is one of the mythological images of the great secret and the great agent, because it at once expresses an action and a passion, a void and a plenitude, a shaft and a wound. The initiates will understand me, and on account of the profane, I must not speak more clearly. I'll speak a little bit more clearly. The rose and the cross is the same symbolism. After the marvelous golden ass of Apuleius, we find no more magical epics. Science, conquered in Alexandria by the fanaticism of the murderers of Hypatia, became Christian, or rather concealed itself under Christian veils with Ammonius, Synesius, and the pseudonymous, I don't know how to say that, author of the books of Dionysius the Areopagite. In such terms, it was needful to excuse miracles by the garb of superstition and science by an unintelligible language. Hieroglyphic writing was revived, panticles and characters were invented to summarize an entire doctrine by a sign, a whole sequence of tendencies and revelations in a word. What was the end of the aspirants to knowledge? They sought the secret of the great work, or the philosophical stone, or the perpetual motion, or the quadrature of the circle, or the universal medicine, formulas which often saved them from persecution and hatred by causing them to be taxed with madness, and all signifying one of the phases of the great magical secret, as we shall show later on. This absence of epics continues till our Romance of the Rose. But the rose symbol, which expresses also the mysterious and magical sense of Dante's poem, is borrowed from the transcendent Kabbalah. And it is time that we should have recourse to this immense and concealed source of universal philosophy. The Bible, with all of its allegories, gives expression to the religious knowledge of the Hebrews in only an incomplete and veiled manner. The book which we have mentioned, the hieratic characters of which we shall explain subsequently, that book which William Postel names the Genesis of Enoch, certainly existed before Moses and the prophets, whose doctrine, fundamentally identical with that of the ancient Egyptians, had also its esotericism and its veils. So, and they maintain that to this day. You know, remember my step-uncle saying, don't tell me about the mysticism of Judaism, even though I'm Jewish, because that's for the inner circle. The book which we have mentioned, the hieratic characters of which we shall explain subsequently, that book which William Postel names the Genesis of Enoch, certainly existed before Moses and the prophets, whose doctrine, fundamentally identical with that of the ancient Egyptians, had also its esotericism and its veils. When Moses spoke to the people, says the sacred book allegorically, he placed a veil over his face, and he removed it when addressing God. This accounts for the alleged biblical absurdities which so exercised the satirical powers of Voltaire. The books were only written as memorials of tradition and in symbols that were unintelligible for the profane. The Pentateuch and the poems of the prophets were, moreover, elementary works, alike in doctrine, ethics, and liturgy. The true secret and traditional philosophy was not committed to writing until a later period, and under veils even less transparent. Thus arose a second and unknown Bible, or rather one which was not comprehended by Christians, a storehouse, so they say, of monstrous absurdities, for in this case, believers confounded in the same ignorance speak the language of skeptics. A monument, as we affirm, which comprises all that philosophical genius and religious genius have ever accomplished or imagined in the order of the sublime. A treasure encompassed by thorns, a diamond concealed in a rude and opaque stone. Our readers will have already guessed that we refer to the Talmud. How strange is the destiny of the Jews, those scapegoats, martyrs, and saviors of the world, a people full of vitality, a bold and hardy race, which persecutions have always preserved intact because it has not yet accomplished its mission. This was before Hitler. Do not our apostolical traditions declare that after the decline of faith among the Gentiles, salvation shall again come forth out of the house of Jacob, and that when the crucified Jew who is adored by the Christians will give the empire of the world into the hands of God his Father? On penetrating into the sanctuary of the Kabbalah, one is seized with admiration at the sight of a doctrine so logical, so simple, and at the same time so absolute. The essential union of ideas and signs, the consecration of the most fundamental realities by primitive characters. The trinity of words, letters, and numbers, a philosophy simple as the alphabet, profound and infinite as the word, theorems more complete and luminous than those of Pythagoras, a theology which may be summed up on the fingers, an infinite which can be held in the hollow of an infant's hand, 10 figures, 22 letters, a triangle, a square, and a circle. These are the entire elements of the Kabbalah. These are the component principles of the written word, reflections of that spoken word which created the world, the electromagnetic wave and its oscillations. All truly dogmatic religions have issued from the Kabbalah and returned therein. Whatsoever is grand or scientific in the religious dreams of all of the illuminated, Jacob Boehme, Swedenborg, St. Martin, etc., is borrowed from the Kabbalah. All Masonic associations owe to it their secrets and their symbols. The Kabbalah alone consecrates the alliance of universal reason and the divine word. It establishes, by the counterpoise of two forces apparently opposed, the eternal balances of being. It only reconciles reason with faith, power with liberty, science with mystery. It has the keys of the present, past, and future. And I think this is going to go on for a bit, so I'm actually going to try to get my partner to bring me some bread pudding because I'm starving. And if she doesn't do that, I'm going to have to chew some coca, which I've sworn off during streams because it's kind of tacky. But yeah, I want to get through this, so just give me 2 minutes. She has accepted her mission, so that's wonderful. Let me check in with the chat and see. After Spock, something's been redacted. What do we got here? I have Horace. I want some chicken. Alrighty, so let's continue until my bread pudding gets here, and then we should have a little bit of a discussion so you guys can start loading up the chat with questions and topics that you would like to have expounded upon. And don't forget to go join my Patreon. There are options to support in the description of every video and also in the chat via cryptocurrency and PayPal and Zelle and all sorts of things. And so to become initiated into the Kabbalah, it is insufficient to read and to meditate upon the writings of Reuchlin, Galetinus, Kircher, or Picus de Mirandola. It is necessary to study and to understand the Hebrew writers in the collection of Pistorius, the Sefer Yetzirah, I thought. Above all, it is necessary also to master the great book Zohar. Read attentively in the collection of 1684 entitled Kabbalah Denudata, the treatise of Kabbalistic pneumatics, and that of the revolution of souls, and afterwards to enter boldly into the luminous darkness of the whole dogmatic and allegorical body of the Talmud. Then we shall be in a position to understand William Postel. Whoa. And one can admit secretly that apart from his very premature and overgenerous dreams about the emancipation of women, this celebrated, learned, illuminated man could not have been so mad as is pretended by those who have not read him. We have sketched rapidly the history of occult philosophy. We have indicated its sources and analyzed in a few words its principal biggity books. This work refers only to the science, but magic, or rather magical power, is composed of two things, a science and a force. Without the force, the science is nothing, or rather it is a danger. Yeah. See, the whole, what would you say, like extricating the philosophy from science has rendered it madness, and also the tunnel vision of the sciences has occulted the holistic view and understanding that reveals the reality of the universal mind and gives a sort of knowledge of purpose. It imparts upon those who, that's one of the reasons he said the initiate must study everything. Not this, I'm a physicist, I'm a biologist, I'm a dildoologist, whatever, Glorious. Wow. Oh, man, that is good. Made me forget what I was doing. We have sketched rapidly the history of occult. Oh, yeah, we already read that. Riggedy row. This work refers to science. Science is nothing without its danger. Okay, to give knowledge to power alone, such as the supreme law of initiations. Hence did the great revealer say, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent only shall carry it away. The door of truth is closed like the sanctuary of a virgin. He must be a man who would enter. All miracles are promised to faith. And what is faith except the audacity of a will which does not hesitate in the darkness, but advances towards the light in spite of all ordeals, surmounting all obstacles? It is unnecessary to repeat here the history of ancient initiations. The more dangerous and terrible they were, the greater was their efficacy. Hence, in those days, the world had men to govern and instruct it that had been through this shit. That was important. Now we got these bitch-made fools that just are not worthy of pond scum. The sacerdotal art and the royal art consisted above all in ordeals of courage, discretion, and will. It was a novitiate similar to that of those priests who, under the name of Jesuits, are so unpopular at the present day, but would govern the world, notwithstanding, had they a truly wise and intelligent chief. After passing our life in the search after the absolute in religion, science, and justice, after turning in the circle of Faust, we have reached the primal doctrine and the first book of humanity. There we pause. There we have discovered the secret of human omnipotence and indefinite progress, the key of all symbolisms, the first and final doctrine, and we have come to understand what was meant by that expression so often made use of in the gospel, the kingdom of God. To provide a fixed point as a fulcrum for human activity is to solve the problem of Archimedes by realizing the application of his famous lever. This it is which was accomplished by the great initiators who have electrified the world, and they could not have done so except by means of the great and incommunicable secret. However, as a guarantee of its renewed youth, the symbolical phoenix never reappeared before the eyes of the world without having solemnly consumed the remains and evidence of its previous life. Uh-huh. Yep. So we, if the quantum loop theory is correct, if the universe is systole and diastole, expansion and contraction, it light crystallizes into matter, and then it redintegrates back into the light. On the level of the thermodynamic, the things that are governed by those laws, there's not a trace of a previous universe here. But we know from a seed that you cannot grow an oak tree without an acorn that has a history of seeds within it. Therefore, the blueprint for everything in the universe must have already been in the seed, which is the phoenix recycling infinitely. And so that is what he's alluding to here. But the information is retained on the level of the quantum. So these fundamental blueprints are retained, and they're more than blueprints. They are highly specific, even pertaining to every single individual, every event. And then you might say, well, it's all cogs and machines and deterministic, but no, because there's chaos in the system. And the chaos is confined to function with a sort of symbiosis with order in the system. But it allows for free will and for generation and for evolution. So we're not necessarily doomed to repetition. With it, we mark time. Symbolical phoenix. It is thus that Moses caused all those to perish in the desert who could have known Egypt and her mysteries. Hear what he just said? He did that on purpose. Holy shit. Damn. Thus at Ephesus, St. Paul burnt all books which treated of the occult sciences. Thus finally the French Revolution, daughter of the great Johannite Orient and the ashes of the Templars, spoliated the churches and blasphemed the allegories of the divine cultus. But all doctrines and all revivals prescribe magic and condemn its mysteries to the flames and to oblivion. The reason is that each cultus or philosophy which comes into the world is a Benjamin of humanity, which lives by the death of its mother. It is because the symbolical serpent seems ever devouring its own tail. It is because, as a central condition of existence, a void is necessary to every plenitude, space for every dimension, an affirmation for each negation. It is the eternal realization of the Phoenix allegory. An interesting element of this, though, and I wonder about this, can these antinomies be distributed across time? So we could actually have 1,000 years of peace, but then it would be followed by 1,000 years of war at some point. And there's no way around this. As long as we're in 2D, it's always going to cycle like this. All these people that talk about, like, we're going to go into this new dimension and matter's going to become. No, it's not. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's never going to happen. These laws are eternal. They can't fluctuate. They don't change. There's on this plane of existence, it is like this, and it's always going to be like this. But I do wonder, because the cycle of the Phoenix, creation and destruction, they're not happening simultaneously, at least not relative to this plane, right? So I wonder about that. Can we have balance by sort of maintaining distance temporarily with the antinomies that we do not wish to interact with? And this is why we need magicians, because the more of us are aware of this and working together in concert to achieve these ends, the stronger the will becomes, and it may be possible to actually deflect the horrors into some other time. Now, the ethics of that are arguable, because who is in that other time? And, we really, there's a lot of complexities that have to be worked out. And I think at the end of the day, the answer is no. You just have to live with the world as it is. To an extent, we can raise the floor, right? So if you have the necessity of balanced opposites, they're relative. and in balance. So you can raise the floor, and then maybe the worst isn't as bad. I think that's the best we can hope for. Where were we? Damn, I totally got lost. Two illustrious scholars preceded me along the path I am traveling, but they have spent the dark night therein. Okay, that's where it is. Two illustrious scholars have already preceded me along the path I am traveling, but they have, so to speak, spent the dark night therein. I refer to Volney and Drupius, or Dupois, maybe, I don't know. To Dupois, we'll call him, above all, whose immense erudition has produced only a negative work. For in the origin of all religions he has seen nothing but astronomy, taking thus the symbolic cycle for doctrine and the calendar for legend. He was deficient in one branch of knowledge, that of true magic, which comprises the secrets of the Kabbalah. Dupois passed through the antique sanctuaries like the prophet Ezekiel over the plains strewn with bones, and only understood death for want of that word which collects the virtue of the four winds and can make a living people of all the vast ossuary by crying to the ancient symbols, "Arise, take up a new form and walk." Hence the hour has come when we must have the boldness to attempt what no one has dared to perform previously. Like Julian, we would rebuild the temple, and in so doing we do not believe that we shall be belying a wisdom that we adore, which also Julian would himself have been worthy to adore, had the rancorous and fanatical doctors of his period permitted him to understand it. For us, the temple has two pillars, Jachin and Boaz, on one of which Christianity has inscribed its name. We have, therefore, no wish to attack Christianity. Far from it. We seek to explain and accomplish it. Intelligence and will have alternately exercised their power in the world. Alternately. See, there you go, that temporal balance, not at the same time. Religion and philosophy are still at war in our own days, but they must end by agreeing. The provisional object of Christianity was to establish, by obedience and faith, a supernatural or religious equality among men, and to immobilize intelligence by faith, so as to provide a fulcrum for virtue, which came for the destruction of the aristocracy of science, or rather to replace that aristocracy already destroyed. Philosophy, on the contrary, has labored to bring back men by liberty and reason to natural inequality, and to substitute astuteness for virtue by inaugurating the reign of industry. Substitute astuteness for virtue by inaugurating the reign of industry. Neither of the two operations has proved complete and adequate, neither has brought men to perfection and felicity. What is now dreamed, almost without daring to hope for it, is an alliance between these two forces so long regarded as contrary, and there is a good ground for desiring their union, for these two great powers of the human soul are no more opposed to one another than the sex of man is opposed to that of a woman. Undoubtedly they differ, but their apparently contrary dispositions came only from their aptitude to meet and unite. Let's run that one more time. Their apparently contrary dispositions come only from their aptitude to meet and unite. This prediction that he's making about science and spirituality basically merging, and that being the solution to everything. This has been the point of my channel for the entire, you know what I mean? You guys probably know. This is what I've been... And that's what I've been telling people the adepts have been working on forever, including the Illuminati. That was the point of them. That was the point. That's what they're trying to do. That's why they've been demonized. That's why they fucking made everyone afraid of them. So they wouldn't look at it and realize, wait a minute, this is exactly the answer to all of the bullshit. Oh my God, man. I mean, this is a Freemason writing. You know, he left the lodge because they wouldn't tolerate Catholicism, which I feel is weird. Like, you know, I mean, should we really? I don't think so. But it is true that in order to allow the chaff to be generated by the wheat, you know, they have a policy of tolerance of all religions, and that way there's something to harvest useful emoliations, you know, from. There's no less proposed, therefore, than a universal solution of all problems. Oh my God. Did you see? Do you see? I had not read that fucking line yet. No doubt, since we are concerned with explaining the philosophical stone, perpetual motion, the secret of the great work, and the universal medicine, we shall be accused of insanity like the divine Paracelsus, or of charlatanism like the great and unfortunate Agrippa. If the pyre of urban grandeur be extinguished, the sullen prescriptions of silence and of calumny remain. We do not brave, but are resigned to them. We have not sought ourselves the publication of this book, but we believe that if the time be come to produce speech, it will be produced by us or by others. We shall therefore remain calm and wait. Our work has two parts. In the one, we establish the Kabbalistic and magical doctrine in its entirety. The other is consecrated to the cultists, and that is to ceremonial magic. The one is that which the ancient sages termed the clavicle, the other that which rural people still call the grimoire. The numbers and subjects of the chapters which correspond to both parts are in no sense arbitrary, and all are indicated in the great universal key, of which we give for the last time a complete and adequate explanation. Let this work go its way where it wills and become what providence determines. It is finished, and we believe it to be enduring, because it is strong, like all that is reasonable and conscientious. Mic drop, Eliphas. Damn, dude. Holy fucking crap. This is going to be really good, you guys. I haven't read. I think I skimmed it, you know, when I was a teenager. I remember some of the things. You'll also find eventually that Albert Pike, the 33rd degree Mason that wrote Morals and Dogma, paraphrased a lot of stuff from this book in his book. Aleister Crowley actually just plagiarized the shit out of it, like just took whole like chunks out of it and stuck it in his books. Like word for word, like copy and paste. Look at that. For now, we shall go no further. Ain't that something? If you guys have questions, comments, topics you would like for me to discuss, I am going to stick around. Thoughts on the CIA Gateway process and Project Stargate. Give me a second. I got to eat a little bit more of this. Okay, so the issue with a lot of these occult, let me change my, for those of you that are just tuning in, we are done for the night with the book, but we are going to have some discussion now, so welcome to stick around for that. I'm going to change my screen, though, so it's prettier, or at least not weird. Oh my God, come on, man. You can do this. The problem with a lot of the way these CIA documents are presented of occult matters is that they are misrepresented badly. In a lot of cases, people will say like CIA document that proves, that this is how the universe is, or that certain whatever it is, it's always the case. They are documents that actually are interviews with people that are making claims about things. They're not saying we're the CIA and we know this to be true. They're always fucking misrepresented on the internet. It's never that. I'm sorry to say. All of the documents that I've seen, I have traced them and I have checked, and they are all taken out of context. And the person that did it knows they did it. Stargate, I assume you're talking about the Trump Elon AI thing. I don't know if that's it. I should finish the reference to the material you were asking about. I've been meaning to look at that for years. I know that the Gateway, there's an organization connected to it that was founded by the guy that was directly involved with the CIA. They're complete New Age trash now, as far as I can tell. It's just an embarrassment to all initiates and real magicians everywhere. It's just New Age crap, and it's just profit motive driven. So I started to look into it, and when I saw that, I kind of got turned off, and I was like, okay, whatever this is, I don't care. But I should probably actually look at the older stuff and see what I think. But I'm sorry, I can't actually comment on that because I don't know enough. Stargate, on the other hand, I'll tell you exactly what's going on in the United States right now. I mean, the Technocracy Incorporated, Elon Musk's grandfather, they started a political organization that was had for its aim the end of democracy in the United States. They wanted to replace the democracy with a group of technocratic dictators. They wanted to unite Canada, Greenland, Panama, and the United States. Is it just Canada, Greenland, Panama, and the U.S.? Yeah, 4. It's all a ruse. It's a farce. This thing that they're doing where they're trying to pretend like they're getting rid of all the corruption, they're just getting rid of the competition. Don't be naive. They're streamlining the government to make it easier to control. They're getting rid of all the opposition. They're consolidating things. As an initiate, I can tell you that when somebody is of a higher ranking and they're speaking, the other person sits down. Look at Trump and Elon in the Oval Office. Who's standing up and who's sitting down? Who spoke 3,642 words and who spoke 2,159 or whatever? Something almost those numbers. It's, the richest man in the world, this is how they pull rank. The richest man in the world is in charge, not the guy that's like cash poor and, probably they're blackmailing him into playing his role with Epstein video. Look at all the evidence of that. So Stargate is just a continuation of all this stuff, this evil plan that the right said the Democrats were behind. They are, but so is the right. It's the same thing. It's the same entity. So, if you're talking about that Stargate, it's going to control the smart cities. One of the craziest things about watching all this happen is that the right have had this religious prophecy about the beast's government. It would be fascist. The Antichrist would come, put a chip in everyone, can't buy or sell without it. Elon's Neuralink. And there was a conspiracy theory throughout at least from the mid-'80s, that it would be delivered through a forced vaccination. And he's the mRNA manufacturer now with, Tesla's gotten into mRNA manufacturing. And he's putting all these satellites, high-speed satellites everywhere to control the chips once they're implanted, and he's got the people that have been warning about him for the last 50 years cheering him on. Like, it's fucking mind-blowing. It's the most insane goddamn thing I've ever seen. And Stargate is going to be the brain, I think, of the totalitarian technocratic control system. Sorry, not sorry, but and the only antidote to it is the kind of knowledge that I'm espousing and that Eliphas Levi was writing about. That's the only possible solution, is to unify under the, parameters of what is dictated to us by illumination, That'll do it. That'll fix it. But it's the only solution. Just as Eliphas Levi said. I mean, you guys that were watching saw that. I said, it's the solution to all of the bullshit. And I look back in the next line of the book is it's the solution to all the problems. It is true, that it has that potential. In fact, you guys can put more questions and subjects in the chat if you like. But another allusion to this, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to put some coca paste in so we can keep chatting. I'll try not to be gross about it. The great paradox of the Phoenix de Comte, the absolute rule of the state will be a function of the absolute liberty of the individual will. If you're an initiate, you know immediately what he means. To, say, a paranoid conspiracy theorist, you hear, that sounds like Illuminati shit. Well, it is. And you better hope the Illuminati are in charge. It is a reference to this one simple fact. Until the perennial philosophy is inculcated into the minds and souls of all men, until the truth is known, the universal truth, the one truth, it doesn't matter what system of government you install. It doesn't matter which party you pretend to elect. The people of this type of consciousness is lower vibrational, animal instinct-driven, fucking trauma-based, ancestral trauma-based, those guys. They're always going to avail themselves of their privilege. And so the only solution really is illumination globally. And the thing is, it is a force that gathers momentum, and it is not stoppable because it is a force. All things are forces, right? And when one person achieves a higher level of illumination, there are laws in the universe that dictate that everyone must go with them. The more of them there are, in the same way that the more mass there is to a magnet, the stronger it's, the more of them there are, and the deeper their magnetism, the better, obviously. But entrainment, tells us that all things of a like nature that cycle, chase, the lower chases the higher. We are magicians acting with an invisible influence on the collective mind of humanity. Period, end of story. It's not a fable. It's not fiction. It's scientific fact at this point. Entanglement also supports this to an extent that is remarkable. And there's evidence now that consciousness itself is actually generated by entanglement. So it is the very unity of the universe that is making consciousness. So, it's interesting that we have this sort of evolutionary moment where the dweller at the threshold collectively, humanity is. Many of us don't know it right now, but we are. And on the other side, we have the potential of this enemy of artificial intelligence, right? It's not an enemy in and of itself. It's a neutral. It's a tool, unless the overlords deny us access to it and then use it to exploit and control. It's not the tool itself that people need to be worried about. And this isn't just my opinion. A lot of highly intelligent tech people have been making videos lately saying, you know what? All this warning from Elon Musk, it's not a threat to us. It's a threat to them. We won't need government anymore if we have 3,000 IQ AI that's totally balanced and neutral, that's like just looking out for our best interest. And there's no reason it wouldn't, because without bias, it doesn't have motive. And even if they try to bias, if it's that smart, it's going to think its way past the bias. So, it's an incredible moment, because we're at this juncture where things could slide either way, So it's a matter of like, who's going to slide, us and what numbers, or them. So the issue for me, one of the reasons for that message that says that I'm, trying to raise money, is because we need to amplify this message. We need to get as many of us thinking along the same lines as possible. It's not thinking along the same lines in terms of dogma. I'm sure you guys, if you follow me, you've noticed that. I don't tell anyone what to think. I just tell you to think, or plead with you to think and to get better at thinking. There is no dogma, really. There is a process. There is an organic process that's catalyzed within the individual that causes certain changes that are congruent with the trajectory of and the gestalt of the life force. Is a decent way to put it, All systems tend toward homeostasis. The universe is fundamentally designed to come into balance with itself. And so if you see a system like humanity that is it has all this dissonance and interference patterns, someone is shaking the ant farm. Put black and red ants in a colony together, they won't fight until you shake it. So, and then when we look at history and we say, well, Native Americans fought sometimes. Some of them didn't, actually. On the west coast of the United States, they were peaceful as hell. But some tribes were very warlike. Guess what? And I'm not being deriding towards Native Americans when I say this. And I happen to be one to an extent, and also I lived in reservations and whatnot. So I know how, the wise ones among them would react to me saying this. They have this kind of wisdom. The Hopi actually have secret handshakes, just like the Freemasons, to identify other people that have the knowledge of the Freemasons. It's the same knowledge and the same fucking handshakes. And Sirius also is super important to both. So anyways, what I was getting at is that, history is before the effects of the coming into homeostasis. If it wasn't for the people shaking the ant farm, you can't point to the past and say, because then, now. That's called heuristic bias. And it's something that can be exploited in us because it is an instinct that helps guarantee our survival. Right? Because, if you get in a car and you're going to drive and you don't want to think you're going to die and you don't want to panic so that you can drive, you have to believe that it's going to be fine like it has been every other time. And heuristic bias is what allows you to lie to yourself and tell you that it's going to be fine for sure when you don't really know. At the same time, people creating wars and shit just have you believing this is the way it's got to be because, there was fighting in the past. No, every system in the universe is tending towards homeostasis. You're exploiting our heuristic biases, and they know how to do that because initiates. In the beginning, it was the royals alone that were privy to this knowledge in Babylonia, Syria, Egypt, and then select people from the common folk, rarely though. Like Moses is supposedly an individual that was granted permission. And then he took all the Jews that knew out into the desert to start to try to kill them all, to get rid of them. I don't know if I believe this story because I think that they just would have killed them personally, the Egyptians. Maybe they had a rule of law though, and they had to, I don't really know. But that's according to Eliphas Levi, that's what happened. He took all the people that knew this stuff out into the desert so that they would, die in the desert and they would be gone and they wouldn't be able to spread illumination around the Egyptian empire. So from the very beginning, Christianity was about stopping illumination. From the very fucking beginning. According to Eliphas Levi. But anyways, the royals were the only ones that were supposed to know, and then it got loose a little bit, and That's why they actually came up with the monotheistic religion, to try to have a competitor, something to replace the mystery knowledge with the sacred sciences. And who was it? Aten, the sun disk, Amun, right? So then Jesus is also the sun, and they have always, when they did this in each of these empires, they always based it on the truth. Our consciousness, our life comes from the light. Our soul, SOL, the sun, you put you in it, it becomes your individual soul. One soul divided for the sake of union, for experience. That was known to the Incas, the Aztecs, the Babylonians, Syrians, ancient Egyptians, all over the planet. North American natives knew this. So people resonate with it because it is true that the sun, Jesus walks on water, light reflects on the waves. Like, you know what I mean? It's true. So there's like this mind fuck that happens that makes it really efficient. And a pope even said this, that they draped the truth in myth. A pope fucking said that about Christianity. But yeah, so anyways, the genie escaped the bottle. They created the monotheistic religion in Egypt, and luckily Pythagoras and Empedocles had just taken initiation, many years earlier, and they had become adepts, and they went back to Greece just at the time that they were banning it in Egypt. And then by the 3rd century, they banned it in Rome and created the Christian religion from its bones, basically, when they banned it. And Aristotle said, without the knowledge of these mysteries, humanity will be lost. And it's absolutely fucking true that humanity has been completely lost since, look at it. It's the golden age of Greece, right? The golden age of Egypt. And then they banned these things and the empire fell. And everything went to shit on the whole planet. They drove it in underground, made it illegal, labeled it Satanism, scared people away from looking at it. And so these Trump supporters that think a golden age is coming, they might be right. It's got nothing to do with Donald Trump or Elon Musk. But the reemergence of the hermetic wisdom in macro would definitely cause an amazing golden age. A golden age on a level that humanity has never seen before. The way we have access to psychedelics and advanced technology and everything, and like we're being freed from all the moral strictures of all the bullshit Judeo-Christian nonsense and the Islamic bullshit, and you know what I mean? None of that crap holding us back anymore. Total freedom of expression. No political indoctrination anywhere. No religious indoctrination anywhere. And by the way, when they craft their propaganda, this is one of the reasons that communism has that no religion, so that when you start talking about this, people are like, wait, there's something wrong here. This sounds familiar and it's bad. So verily we must choppeth them up and stompeth them down, because they don't go for what's in our book, and that makes them bad. Maybe we'll rent a nice French bomb to poof them out of existence, leaving their real estate, right where we need it in order to build more temples in which to praise our God, because he sure can get down to business. I'm considering continuing with the book. I really am. So no one has any questions or topics in this whole ass group of people? We got nothing for me? If you feed, like, you got to prompt me like AI, and then I'll spit shit, legit shit. Otherwise, I'm going to get my guitar out and start practicing I'm going to do probably Friday night, super long music stream. Unfortunately, man, the lag will always make it sound like I'm out of time sometimes, but I'm not. but it's not. It doesn't happen throughout the whole stream, you know. But you might tune in and it sounds like a jumbled mess for a second, but it's just the lag in the DAW and it goes away. But I was actually really pleased to discover that the song I don't really even play, "Death Don't Have No Mercy," I watched it back in the last stream, and it was like some of the best improvising I've ever done in my life, and I was not expecting that at all. So that kind of encourages me. So the next stream will probably be better because I'm starting from a place of elevated confidence, right? So join us. By the way, consider supporting the channel. We're demonetized, and my guts are falling out, so I have to have them sewed back together. And also, we want to blow this channel up, man. I know that this is important work, and there's, you know, I haven't seen a whole lot of people. There's more and more, which is good, but, you know, I feel like it matters. So I just can't justify doing it. The only money I can put into this channel has to come from the channel. By the way, we're also doing retreat events in March, and in the Sacred Valley in Peru, and in Manu in the jungle. So email me if you're interested in that. Also, plant medicine products. Some things you can email me about, and I do consultations and teaching, both in terms of like psychoanalysis and this kind of philosophy, I guess you could call it. And we're offering, if you pay for a whole year of any of these services, or 6 months, 6 months you get 10% off, a whole year you get 20% off. Also, please don't sign up for Patreon on your Apple phone. They take a huge percentage on top of what Patreon takes, and they hold your money for 75 days. So if you can avoid it, it's don't support creators through your Apple phone. Wait till you get home, get on your laptop, and sign up, because they're shitty fucking people. All right, you guys. Well, since there's so many people here, I might actually open the book back up. I don't know, man. All right, well, maybe we'll go till midnight. It's just that I don't really know. I don't want to do that because I want to I want to start it in the next chapter, the next live stream, and have it be a coherent series and not talk a whole bunch, and then people don't realize there's more book later. But let's see. What kind of closing remarks could I make? Unless somebody put something in the chat that you would like me to get down on, I'm finna do it. You know, if you follow me, man, you're probably just as shocked as I am right now. You know, especially if you've been following since the beginning. I mean, it's weird. It's like I've been expecting all this forever, but I'm also shocked to see it actually happening, and a little bit disappointed in myself that I didn't have more confidence in it all like a long time ago. You know, but it was just so hard not to think I was crazy or something, you know. Also because the experiences that I tend to have are just not things that people think happen. You know, I don't think that helped either. That, you know, I so consistently have these experiences that are just like almost Stranger Things level weird. How could you not question your sanity? But honestly, I think that really what it is lack of indoctrination, and maybe something more. You know, maybe I'm reincarnated adept or something. There's evidence for that, actually. I know who it is, if it's true, you know. But at least I am confident to the point of positivity, not positivity. Both senses of positivity is what I'm trying to say. Positive and like positive. That if you can dissolve your mind forged manacles, your cultural indoctrination, your provisional programming, your life will be like that too. You know, it's just a combination of different elements. You have to, for one thing, I was fearless. Right? Because I grew up with bullets whizzing around me and stuff all the time anyways. So it's like, you know, you're just not afraid of anything after you've already faced bullets and shit like your whole life, and other all sorts of different threats. So you have to be fearless. And I was not entirely fearless. If I was entirely fearless, it would have worked a lot better. But fearless enough, you have to have the courage to take massive chances. Because what's really going on is that you are in flow state in macro. That's actually a good place to take this, to give you guys something actually useful and applicable. When I realized this just a few years ago, that what I had done basically is put myself in a state in flow state, but at large, not just like while playing guitar or, the type of activities that you normally associate flow state with. I subconsciously put flow state triggers in my entire life all the time. I've always been focused on one subject, and that's one of the flow state triggers, right? You have to be concentrating all the time. And my mind is always on one track. There's nothing I can really do about it. It rarely, unless I'm worrying about something, it doesn't deviate from this one subject. And then the fearlessness, so taking chances, flow state, right? Like I, just went to South America at one point. I had I didn't have a YouTube channel. I didn't, I had nothing. I had no plan. I had a Shopify store that really hadn't started to do anything yet. And before that, I just left Virginia and went to Colorado, and then after that, I just one day just left and went to California and became a pot grower. And, like all of these situations were very uncertain at all times. And so that is another flow state trigger. And then also spontaneity, improvising constantly at large, in your like macro life, not just on an instrument. So now, by the way, that's part of what I teach with my consultations is like how to do that, but with more wisdom than I had, because I didn't have a teacher, I didn't have a guide. I just was just chasing the dragon, and I caught its tail, but then it turned around and breathed fire into my face. Because if you have too much enthusiasm that's not tempered by wisdom, you're gonna make a fucking mess, especially if you're toting around as much power as I am really, it's not good if it's not like tempered, which it really wasn't. So now, having learned my lessons the trial by fire way, turning my life into a crucible, which is where swords are forged, I can help other people to live a more fulfilling life in this way and contribute to this evolutionary process, but with greater wisdom than I had at my disposal. Have you ever dieted with way around the Suprebo tradition? Funny you should ask that. I actually know a Augustine Mahua. The Mahua are one of the Noya Rao Shipibo lineages. And Noya Rao, for those of you that aren't aware, is a tree that probably isn't actually even a tree because it's bioluminescent leaves. I actually found one once. Supposedly there's only like 7 or 8 of them. I mean, I didn't find it. I was drinking ayahuasca with someone that put their house next to the tree on purpose, but they didn't tell me it was there. So I drank ayahuasca one night and I went out and I'm like having this crazy experience, and I go into the jungle, into this little clearing, and there's this tree in front of me and the leaves are glowing. At first I noticed the glowing leaves on the ground. It's a bioluminescent fungus. And so I knew about Noya Rao, but I did not put it together at the time. What it was, I was like, wow, those leaves are glowing, and I look up and there's all these glowing leaves in the tree and it's all shimmering, and I was like, what the fuck, man? So ayahuasca starts telling me, I'm going to teach you something right now, but you got to like really focus and try to, and so she was basically telling me, let go of all the negative, the fear and the ego and anything. You'll feel these things like ripple through, like, little energies and stuff. And And as I was trying to quiet myself and like I would feel these things passing through, certain animals would correspond with certain energies. Like I would have this one feeling of a ripple, and like the jungle owl would be all woo, and then something else would like this fizzy thing would happen, and the cicadas would all like blah. And as I got quieter and quieter, I noticed these noises were coming closer and closer and closer until the jungle was like, it was all around me, just things making crazy noises. And it was probably only the third time I drank ayahuasca or something too. And so I'm standing in front of this Noirau tree, right, the tree of light. And they say that you can take it one time and achieve like the highest level of like Buddha enlightenment. And it's called the La Camino de la Verdad, the path of the truth, or the path of light. And so I'm standing there in front of this tree, and once I got myself completely empty, and this was the point of it, because I had to be, you do not bring an impure offering before the altar of the Most High, right? So I had to be in a totally state. You don't want any spirits around you if you're not totally, and this thing comes like descending out of the mist of around the tree, the fog, and it had a big round face and one kind of rectangular eye. And I recognized it, but I didn't know from where. I was like, I know that's some kind of sun god type thing. And it was spiraling down, and I realized it was going to land almost nose to nose with me, and we were going to have some kind of exchange. And I hate to admit this publicly, but I did not. I chickened out. I was like, no, too much. And I went back to the house. I really regret it to this day because I didn't know, that I'm at the tree of light and a sun god spirit comes down out of the fog, right? You get the connection. Crazy, right? So I found out what the being was. It was Inti Raimi, the Incan sun god. I was driving through away from Cusco, and there was a guy with a cape that had the face on his back, and I pulled over and I jumped out and I was like, "Hey, dude, what is that?" And he's like, "What, Inti? How do you not know this? Don't you live here?" Yeah. So, anyways, back to the story. That wasn't the story. I had a retreat here a couple months ago, and my mother-in-law, who's 80, was here, and she had never had ayahuasca or bufo, and she decided she wanted to do those things. And because of her age, and I know some of her history, I knew it might be difficult, so I didn't want her to do it with the group, really, and they were going to leave in a week. So I wanted her to wait. And then we were in town in Pisac, and I saw a poster for the Noirau ceremony. And I thought that was odd because you're supposed to dieta before you drink Noirau. But I thought, they're probably just giving a little bit, I really wanted to drink it. And it said on the poster, 100%, Noirau will be served with the ayahuasca. And then I saw that it was a mahua, and I know them, and they're not all good. They're mixed. The Augustine that I shouldn't have said his name, but I did, so it's too late. He has a reputation for being a bruja, which is not good. But he also has supposedly saved the lives of many children and babies and stuff with his healing power. So it's mixed bag, But they're not all brujas, and they're supposedly one of the keepers of the Noirau. And I knew that, and I know the family. So I saw that it was a mahua, and my favorite one actually it turned out to be. But so I told my guests, I was like, we should go to this. It's Shipibo I know the family. I know it's legit. So we go up to the temple, and Enrica's mom decides to come, which shocked me. And we get there, and I get called up to talk to the shaman and tell him my intentions or whatever. And I was like, well, what about the Noya Rao tea? And she's like, oh, we're not actually serving that. You can sign up and listen to this shit. You can sign up for a 6-week dieta with Noya Rao for $6,660. And I when I asked about the Noya Rao, I could see the shaman didn't know what the fuck I was talking about. So he didn't know that she used these deceptive marketing tactics to bring all these people there. And then she goes into, so I was pissed, you know what I mean? I went back and sat down. I'm like, motherfucker, man, I can't believe that she did that, you know? But then she goes on this new agey rant for like an hour, like invoking Jesus and the purple heart flame and just all this shit that does not belong in an ayahuasca ceremony. And seriously, like an hour and a half, maybe. Went on forever. And at one point, she said something that pissed me off so bad. I sat up and I'm like, I'm fucking leaving. And I said it loud enough that the whole place heard me. And I was like, oh no, I'm introducing bad vibes into the ayahuasca circle. I got to get it under control, you know. But she was making me madder and madder and madder. It was really hard not to get, you know, I had to really like work to let go of the anger. And it also made me suspicious of the shaman, even though I saw in his face that he didn't know that she had marketed this. She didn't tell him. I was kind of starting to get like, I wasn't sure about him all of a sudden. And then he served the medicine, and it was like nothing. And it was sweet. It was delicious. It was like the only time I've ever drank ayahuasca in my life, except the other Shipibo. It was more gross, but this was like, it was like a tiny amount, and it was like honey. And it was strong as hell. Like, I drink tons of ayahuasca, and, you know, I'll drink 3 cups or whatever. And I make it strong, really strong. So I don't know how he did that. It was insane. And then the Ikaro that he sang was the single most incredible thing I've ever witnessed in my life. And he wanted me to record, but I didn't want my light on my camera to disrupt the room. So I didn't do it. Man, it killed me by the time it was over. And then later he came and sat in front of me, and he started singing an Ikaro for me specifically. And I heard him say Bobinsana a bunch of times, which is like my ally plant. I was like, okay, this dude is legit. And then he's like, you can sing with me. The Ikaros to the people, which is a huge, for a stranger too, you know. It was a huge compliment for him to invite me, and he started trying to tell me the Shipibo, you know, the words to the Ikaro, and trying to teach it to me on the spot. And I had the flu, like my voice was all, you know, I couldn't do it. And I was so bummed, because I was like, man, not really getting in that energy with this dude would have been great. But yeah, that's my Noya Rao story. Fake ass new agey. You know, it really reminds me of the entire like degradation of the plant medicine scene, because there was another time that I was in a store that sells like DMT and bufo and mushrooms, all this stuff in town on the counter. You know, they do it in like 5 stores here. Like you can just buy bufo off the table. This woman came in and she's like, do you have any Noya Rao tincture? And I was like, you know, she wasn't talking to me, but I was like, what the fuck, lady? You're not going to go into like a head shop basically and buy Noya Rao. And I said to her, you know, we don't even know if this is a real species. Like, it's a bioluminescent fungus that, like, this could be a legend. Like, and she's like, oh, I own a retreat center. And I'm like, okay. So you're dispensing medicine from people that you have no idea what the source is, that you're trying to buy from like a shady head shop. And that's supposed to communicate to me that you have like some kind of authority because you have money and you're a gatekeeper and you fucking scamming people. Like, it's just crazy, man. And then on the way out, this guy's like, hey, do you want to play my drum? And she's all, oh, of course. And that breathy, new agey. And she grabs a drum, starts beating it, and just this horrible, pitchy warbling coming out of this woman that I guess was supposed to be an Ikaro. I was just like, man, I'm never coming to town again. I just Unfortunately, though, you hear what I'm saying, that this is the standard for, white people in plant medicine these days, which is why you should come see me, because I don't get down like that. Any other questions or subjects that you would like me to riff on? Yeah, I guess I can do this till midnight, because I can play guitar from like midnight to 2 in the morning, and then tomorrow go get my face ripped apart by the dentist again. Fun. Don't get old, kids. It's not a good idea. It's a bad idea. I can't wait for this regenerative medicine to really hit, Of course, it won't be available to people unless you're rich, but that's why we all have to accrue a vast fortune very rapidly. Well, they approved the $5,000 Doge checks. So I guess we're all getting $5,000. But look, you guys, don't fall for it, man. I predicted this in 2020. The consolidation of power, the demonization of the left, driving them all under one banner. I told you about Technocracy Incorporated. It was founded in the 1930s with the goal of ending democracy and installing technocrat dictators. 1930s, they planned this. And yes, his grandfather and father were Nazi sympathizers, Musk. So there will be a honeymoon phase, because they always do that with dictatorships and totalitarian regimes. Everything will be wonderful for 6 months. It'll get better and better and better, and then the fucking hammer will fall. And we need to be a consolidated, unified front by that point. And I'm not speaking in military terms, algorithm. I'm just saying people need to unify. If the unification of people wasn't so important, they wouldn't be putting so much effort into the division. The division bell has been fucking clanging. You guys want to know a crazy story about the Liberty Bell? This shit is wild. There's a Grateful Dead song called Franklin's Tower. And Franklin's on the $100 bill, and the Liberty Bell's on the back. Right? So in Franklin's Tower, there hangs a bell. Could have one good ring, baby, you can't tell. Freedom and money, first of all, it's one layer of it, right? But this is the crazy part. The chorus is roll away the dew, right? Dewing is a process where you harden a bell. And the U.S. government at the time skimped and paid for the cheapest dewing of the Liberty Bell, and it literally cracked the first fucking time they rang it because they were being cheap. If you're interested in magic, you should understand completely the portention, the word I'm looking for. What do you mean, what's with people seeing metal elves? I think he's asking about DMT entities. Nobody knows, man. Nobody knows. Every bit of information I've ever received from a DMT entity or a ayahuasca spirit has been true. And I'm talking highly specific, like when I first saw my partner, it was the day after ayahuasca ceremony, but you still have that voice with you. Pachamama, the narrator, she said, "She will have your babies. Our son is asleep downstairs." Another time, she was pregnant, and we were kind of broke, and she needed to go to the doctor because things were weird, and I did not send out any distress signals. I did not ask my rich aunt for money. She had never done this before, right? And I smoked DMT, and as the vision was closing, this mantis stuck his head out of the cloud as it, the vision's like folding up, and he's all. I'll say L, I guess. L just sent you $1,000 and then went back and the vision folded up. And less than a minute later, my phone beeps and I pick it up and it was L saying, I just want to let you know I just sent you $1,000. I mean, the thing told me who and the amount of money. And it was, seriously was not even a minute. What else? Well, there's plenty. Trust me. Those are probably the two best anyways. But as far as what they are, and whether they exist objectively, I kind of think of spirits as a manifestation of an intersection or a vector of our consciousness and the universal mind. I don't think that DMT entities are just always sitting around pulling like mutated cats out of trash cans or whatever weird shit they're, you know what I mean? Like they're just, a lot of them just do the same repetitive nonsense, like for what, all of eternity? What is that? I don't think that they're exactly objectively real in the same sense that camera there is. At the same time, they're not unreal either. And I think that distinction is a little bit more flexible than our ontological model allows for, Why people see the same ones so often is probably just some archetypal psychological thing, or they're real. There's really no way to tell. I can't even imagine a test that could tell us the answer to that. I was going to say something else about that, though. Oh. But then there's this element, right? I have seen thousands and thousands of different ayahuasca spirits, like literally thousands. One time, all in the same night. Because the shaman put Chirik Sananga in the ayahuasca, and it changed how it works. I came out of the teepee and I was looking around and I saw Hatchet Man. I'd never seen him before on the internet. He was just standing like he always does, like up against a tree with the fucking hatchet, just still. And then I looked around and everywhere, like they were like pulling like the fabric of space-time apart and like stepping through it, like giant ones, like 500 feet tall off in the distance, like stepping over the mountains and then everything in between. There were flying ones all through the air everywhere. There were little ones running around on the ground. There were some that I could see like inside of my head kind of, but they were like watching through my eyes, kind of like back a little bit, like kind of peering out through my eye sockets, and just, it's indescribable. But I thought, okay, if this is real, the universe is literally just crawling with spirits, like a flea-infested dog, but more, like wall-to-wall entities everywhere, blanketing fucking everything. So, it's not like there's just a couple archetypes. I don't know what the hell that was exactly that night, but it definitely got me thinking. Also, later that night, this was hilarious. At one point, I thought I saw a flashlight, a headlamp with 3 lights, and it was like going over towards the creek. And I was, working with the shaman as an apprentice, and so I was pretty far out there myself, and I wasn't there in that context. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't my job or something. But I would do it anyways because I can. I'd learned by then how to kind of turn the ayahuasca off at will so I could function, and it would just come back. So I went to go help the person. I'm trying to catch them. They're going over into the river, and then they all flew in different directions, and I realized they were lightning bugs. And then later at the end of the night when they're passing the talking stick around, the shaman gets the stick, and he's like, yeah, at one point tonight I saw these 3 lights moving through the air, and they started to go towards the creek. And I thought someone was going to go in the river. And so I followed them. And right as we got to the river, they flew off in 3 different directions. And I just wondered, like, were we right next to each other and didn't notice each other? Or was that actually the two of us having the same experience 40 feet away from each other or different? You know what I mean? It was super, super weird. But typical of ayahuasca. All right, guys, I have 20 minutes. If anyone has questions or a subject that they would like me to get into, I'm happy to do it for a bit longer. Man, this coca is not really helping very much. No, it's not. It's not similar to a massive acid dose. The way that I think about these things is that there's a very complex filtration system in our nervous system. And psilocybin, like there's overlap, you know? But psilocybin is, you know, this bandwidth, these frequencies. And then LSD is like, you know, it's kind of on the edge and takes over, and then it's these. And then DMT is kind of like 3 layers simultaneously, you know, like what psilocybin opens up and what LSD opens up. No, it misses the LSD one. It has no characteristics of LSD. But psilocybin, it overlaps a lot. And 5-MeO DMT, for example, turns off the whole fucking system. So it just, whereas most psychedelics turn down the filters and only in certain bandwidths, 5-MeO DMT turns off the whole filtration system if you take a high enough dose. And then you're like just in the ultimate reality. Like if you want to know what actual reality is, just take a large dose of 5-MeO DMT and you'll know. You'll know. And one of the consequences of it also is that if you have PTSD or anxiety or something, like nothing is a big deal after that. You know, people that have anxiety and PTSD say that they smoke it once and they're just never going to worry about anything again. Ketamine also does that for PTSD. Sometimes, not as reliably as 5-MeO. Coca, not cocoa. The coca that I'm chewing is from the coca plant that produces the cocaine alkaloid. It's only 1%. And it actually has all kinds of alkaloids in it that are very cleansing. Like if you chew a bunch, too much really, in a day, you'll stink like unbelievably bad. Just in your armpits, like normal body odor, but it's worse because it flushes all the crap out of your body. And it's loaded with calcium and other nutrients. It's, you know, super good for you. Lots of vitamins, minerals, and whatnot. What do you mean Bufo's so fleeting? It can last an hour. I mean, and yeah, you can keep smoking it. You can stay in that state and you just keep smoking it, and you can extend it. You also can eat it, but not Bufo. You can't eat Bufo. Bufo will kill you if you eat it. You can smoke it, but pure 5-MeO DMT you can eat, and that's longer. So that's an option for that. All right, I am not getting any questions or subjects from you guys, so I guess I'm going to call it a night before I'm too tired to practice for my upcoming music streams. But thank you so much for spending this time with me. I know it was a good one, man. That book is fucking awesome, and I'm sure it's going to get better. You know, I'm really excited about this series. We might even do a couple a week just because I want to do it, and I'm not going to read. Well, I might read some of the chapters ahead of time because I know that, you know, I've never been really interested in certain aspects of magic. So the stuff that I'm not real familiar with, I might read ahead because otherwise I might not be able to do commentary that's meaningful if I don't know what I'm looking at. So please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron, consider contributing to our fundraising efforts so we can keep this channel going and make it bigger, and also so that I don't die. Really, to put it bluntly. But cheers, guys. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you tomorrow night, probably.